I call to order the March 1, 2021 business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request everyone in the audience to please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Mr. Messer, please lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Present.
Ms. Bolton? Present. Mrs. Bowers?
Here.
Mr. Lindy?
Here.
Mr. Messer? Mr. Morosky?
Here.
President Jones?
Here. Members of the public who wish to speak may do so by clicking the chat button now. The chat feature will be open for your request for 5 minutes. Please submit your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if you want a direct response to any questions you might have. Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the special meeting February 22nd, 2021, and the business meeting February 22nd, 2021.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved as presented. Okay, so in committee reports, we're going to start. Ms. Bolton, please present the Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee. And I just as a matter of favor, please, for all the committee reports, they're pretty extensive reports. So if you could just hit the high points, we'd appreciate it. Ms. Bolton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm presenting the minutes from our last meeting. We did have, again, an extensive agenda, and some of these are regularly appearing agenda items, and a couple are different and new, and some are repeats where we've raised the issues before. We had a great presentation about the monthly financials and posted that on our site. We also had an additional update regarding preschool promise and CPS preschool expansion. I want to draw attention to the fact that the preschool promise folks, again, mentioned that at the completion of an audit of their work, they had an unmodified audit, which is to be complimented for their good work. Also want to point to the second time we've seen this really new chart, and I would hope that the board members really check it out. It really deals with the status of all of the grants, federal and state and private grants that we have. And it's again, a new tool to kind of follow that along. We talked briefly about the extended learning opportunity that the administration is beginning to work on and what kinds of monies that might actually cost us and some of the challenges. And we're glad to hear that. And I'm sure that's a topic in all of the committees. We also had an interest by member Messer regarding preschool and preschool deserts, which is one of the promises that we all made during preschool promise, that we would be addressing that. We found out from both Vera Brooks and also the preschool promise folks that 4C has been conducting a rather extensive study about that very issue of preschool deserts, if you will, in particular areas of our district. And so that'll be coming forward in March or very early April, and that will help us in our overall growth plan for CPS as well as expansion for CPS preschools, and appreciate them doing that report. Also, we heard a report as well from our treasurer regarding, and this is something else Member Messer was interested in, that was the COVID impact and the COVID financial impact as to how much the COVID crisis, extended crisis, has cost us, and those sorts of dollars that have also been coming in regarding revenue as a result, as well as some of the savings. Then also we did, back on the preschool piece, it did come up again about, and I think the president is going to be dealing with this, the carryover joint resolution or mutual resolution. We talked briefly and then more extensively about how can we build a budget without having made pretty firm decisions about what the enrollment may look like and the impact of the enrollment. The treasurer got us updated as well on the ODE letter that had to go back regarding when we would be facing a deficit, and good news that the increased revenues might be an easy answer to that. And then we also had another report about transportation, and again, it was an update on the MOU regarding supplying of drivers. Also, the issue of whether or not to extend the 5 or 6 contracts with our 5 or 6 transportation vendors. The committee continues to be concerned about that extension, not about the vendors, but under what conditions. And there is an interest in also waiting an additional year to do a very big RFP or RFI. So those are things that we have to come to grips with. And Mr. Johnson, Director of Transportation, said we have until April, early April, to make some sorts of decisions about that. And finally, we did an evaluation session, an executive session for our treasurer. And I submit these minutes. And with these minutes attached, as you will see, is our work plan. And our work plan of approval of these minutes tonight will be the approval by the board of the committee's work plan. I submit, hope for passage.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Do board members have questions or comments about the Budget, Finance, and Growth report? Okay, and thank you for pointing out about the plan. It's in there. All righty, moving on, Ms. Bates, please present the Health and Safety Committee meeting report.
Yes, thank you. Our first item on the agenda was our report from our governmental liaisons, Mr. Kearney and Mr. Glover, and that is attached to this these minutes, so you can read those at your convenience. We also have we are also planning very, very soon on March 18th, a joint meeting of the Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee and the Health and Safety Committee with Senator Blessing and our governmental liaisons. And he's been meeting with us before, and we're very fortunate that he fostered this relationship with us. So we have that to look forward to. We also have attached our committee work plan, so we hope that that is accepted as well with the vote to accept the minutes. What's a little different is that we have included updates on positive school culture and a review of discipline data, and those will be quarterly reviews of discipline data. The administration receives monthly reviews, but we were told by Ms. Bunte that this would be an easy thing to present because it's something that's already done for the administration. And on the dates of the quarterly updates, and this will probably be organized closer to the new school year next year, is that where you will ask the administration to bring together, and I believe that Superintendent Mitchell has already organized this group, a group of students from all of our high schools, and invite them to attend when this is disseminated, and we can, receive their input as well. So that's something that we have some time to put together. We'll receive the quarterly updates beginning with our next meeting in March, but the student participation will take a little bit more time, I think, and understandably so, and we'll begin that next school year. And we received a pedestrian safety update, and that PowerPoint is included as well for your reading. And I submit these minutes as written with the committee work plan and hope for acceptance.
Thank you. Do board members have questions and comments about the Health and Safety Committee report? Did I see a hand? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bates. Ms. Bolton, again for the Audit Committee report.
Thank you. And just for the public's sake, the Audit Committee is a committee made up of community members with particular expertise in financial matters. And I report only as finance chair, but the chair of the Audit Committee is Mr. Tim Heldman. We have several items from the audit committee's work. They did determine their year's meeting schedule, and that's included as you see. Also, we had a continuing report and update and some news regarding the benefits audit has been conducted and how to implement certain aspects of that audit. We do have the hiring of I believe, a third party that will be helping us with that. I think that may be appearing in the treasurer's report soon, I think. Transportation gave a tremendously long report about many, many different things regarding how important that transportation is. Again, the issues were raised about the extension of the 5 or 6 current contracts with current vendors, as well as the need for an RFI and RFP. And fortunately, or unfortunately, depending upon how you feel about it, some of us were coming from a meeting. It was a briefing of the governor's budget, and there are a significant number of things happening within the governor's budget that will force us to be rethinking some aspects of our transportation services. Mr. Johnson was well aware of that, but again, very extensive regarding Metro and regarding yellow bus service, and then also a new role for the Hamilton County Education Service Center to somehow be a mediator, if you will, among the charters and the parochials and the privates and the public system that is ours. So that's sort of interesting, I would say. Our internal auditor, Lauren Roberts, gave an update regarding the status of both external and internal audits that are occurring. And Kevin Ashley again presented the financial matters on a monthly basis, and audit meets every other month. Treasurer again updated CARES Act 2, and interestingly enough, Chairman Heldman decided to put on the agenda as well and see if there was interest to actually have a audit committee financial boot camp for committee members, and I'm sure that board members would also be invited. So I think that's great, and it's a wonderful group that really does advise us and gives us a very different perspective. And appreciate everyone's interest and submit and hope for adoption.
Thank you. Do board members have questions or comments about the audit committee report? Okay, thank you. I need a motion to approve the committee minutes as written.
So moved.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Okay, we have 2 presentations tonight. Superintendent, please introduce our first presentation.
Yes, thank you, Board President Jones. So we do have 2 presentations. The first one is centered around our board goals, student-centered decision-making. And this is a very exciting one as we talk about our young people. And I'm very happy that you'll be able to actually hear from our young people tonight through our Speak Up, Speak Out group under the leadership of Assistant Superintendent Shauna Murphy. Thank you.
Am I advancing my own slides? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Mitchell. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for allowing me to do this presentation tonight. This presentation focuses on the district's at least partial response to the death of George Floyd, as well as the civil unrest that was happening in our community and in our nation. We were away from our students at that time. They were hurting. We were hurting. There was a citywide curfew going on. We wanted to figure out how we could get in contact with our kids, hear from our kids, and let them share with us what they were thinking about this time. Next slide, please. And so, next slide, please. Because it is one of our goals in our strategic plan to make decisions based on what our kids want, what our kids need, the superintendent reached out to me and asked me to pull together a group of kids, as she mentioned. Next slide, please. And so tonight you're going to hear about 3 key messages from our students. And so those messages are centered around informing you about what their demands are. Also, collecting feedback and clarifying any information that's shared through those demands, and then, of course, identifying a path moving forward. So tonight, next slide, please, I have with me Josh Harden, our district's athletic manager, as well as Ashley Phelps helped in this work. And so Josh is going to introduce you actually to some of the students who participate in Speak Up, Speak Out. And they are going to do that virtually.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Murphy and Superintendent Mitchell. Good evening, Board President Jones, Vice President Messer, and the board. It is good to see you all once again. We're looking forward to this presentation that will be led by our Speak Up and Speak Out student leaders. This initiative was created over the summer to give our African American students an outlet and have their voices heard surrounding racial injustice and inequities. To date, we have hosted 8 live sessions, including the recent virtual rally. We have hosted many productive sessions with city leaders, city council members. We had the CPD police chief and many CPS staff, including Superintendent Mitchell, Deputy Superintendent Ahmad, principals, counselors, social studies teachers, and many members from our curriculum department. Our city leaders have been a part of great dialogue and have empowered and supported our future leaders on how to effectively create change. The virtual rally that took place last week currently has 1.4 thousand views and counting. This rally can be found on our IMCPS Facebook page. We'd like to give a special shout out to Joy Matose, Mike Davison, Rob Wilson, Tisha O'Connell, and Nia Balke with Cohere for the behind the scenes work. And of course, our stars, in addition to our Speak Up, Speak Out students, we had Izzy Rudnick and the CPS Jazz Academy, Eric Davis and the Cincinnati Reds, Black Owned, and an interview with Paul McMillan, our Taft High School cheerleaders led by Rebecca Beach, Cincinnati Public School athletic directors, and your very own Board President Jones for the great involvement in the virtual rally. We really look forward to watching the growth of this program and our involved students and believe their initiatives truly align well with our newly formed anti-racism policy and newly created diversity, equity, and inclusion manager position. I would like to recognize Ashley Phelps, who have truly been instrumental in guiding the students throughout these past 9 months. 9 months, wow. We have a few of our Speak Up and Speak Out student leaders here today to share their list of demands. And at this time, I would like to ask Walnut Hills Jr., who happens to be an excellent student athlete herself, Simone Simmons, to come on and begin the student presentation. Simone?
Can somebody please present the slides? Thank you. Hello, everyone. I would like to present to you the CPS Speak Up and Speak Out Executive Committee's list of demands, which was created on August 5th, 2020. Next slide, please. Our own superintendent referred to it as an opportunity for the young people in the city of Cincinnati to rise up in peaceful demonstration, take a stance against racism that is seen within our communities and potentially all experienced within our school. CPS Speak Up and Speak Out is a way to encourage our fellow classmates to get involved any way they can, and we feel that our program is the perfect opportunity to do so for our young students. Next slide, please. That's a picture of me, Simone Simmons. I'm a junior at Walnut Hills High School. I'm also a member of Girls to Women at Walnut. I play basketball, and I'm a part of the choir for Walnut Hills. Outside of school, I'm a member of Jack and Jill of America and a member of the Teen Ambassador Board for the Attorney General. Next slide, please. I would like to present to you all our first demand. Our first demand is that we demand that every high school develop a dedicated peer group to discuss the issues faced by Black students in their respective school. We want to make sure that it doesn't just end here. It is important that school is a safe place and feels like family. With the group dedicated solely to the discussion of these topics, students will be able to provide a safe place in their school where they can unpack emotions and share fellow experiences with their fellow students that they might have in common with each other. Next slide, please. Our second demand is that we demand the district create a platform for all voices to be heard through a student-led public rally. Whenever it becomes safe for us to gather, CPS should acquire a spot downtown to give a platform to those who want to speak and raise awareness about the injustices that young Black people face. This will allow more teens and adults of all races and ethnicities who may not have been a part of Speak Up and Speak Out to join the conversation. This could be organized and led by any CPS student who is interested in supporting the effort. Just this past Thursday, we had a virtual rally, but in person would have a much different look and feel about itself. An open podium for all students and adults who would be provided to share their thoughts and the changes they want to see within our district and our community. Next slide, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Rachel Scales. I'm a senior at Riverview East Academy. I am a part of Girls to Women, a Better View, and peer leaders at school. I'm also a volleyball player and a softball player. Outside of school, I am part of Speak Up, Speak Out, the Superintendent's Student Council. I am really involved in my community. So yep, that's a little bit about me. Next slide, please. Our third demand was we demand that Black history is embedded in the curriculum throughout the school year, not just in February. We want to be taught about the injustices attached to our economic status as well as our political status and our empowerments. We demand that a non-filter, updated, and accurate history course required for all students to graduate high school, whether offered virtually or in class. Additionally, we would like all staff to participate in an ongoing culture training to be able to properly teach these courses. We would like for curriculum to be changed because we feel like we're only taught Black history when it's convenient, which is only in February. As we know, February is we feel like we're only given 28 days to know about years of history. So we would like for that to be changed to all year round. We taught more of white history than we are Black, so we want to be taught equally more about our history as well. The next slide, please. Our fourth demand was we demand that CPS actively support students who want to become more civically engaged. High school leaders should support all students that are of age to vote by taking students through the registration process and providing credible information in regards to candidates. We also demand assistance with understanding the voting process for those that are not of age to vote in hopes to be best prepared for the future. As we also talked, we came to the conclusion that we aren't taught life skills, as in voting. I have not been taught how to vote in school, what to do when to vote, how to go about voting, or even how to register to vote. So we would like for that to also be a part of CPS or a part of a class or maybe an extracurricular activity for kids to be able to be a part of, so that when they go into adulthood, when they turn 18 and are able to vote, that they're not thrown to the wolves and don't know how to go about voting. The fifth slide, please. Our last slide was we demand that CPS facilitates a stronger relationship and a better understanding between students and the Cincinnati Police Department. Building a relationship with CPD could assist with the tension felt between students and police officers in the community. We hope to have a relationship with officers that make us feel safe and not threatened or looked at as a criminal just because of the color of our skin. We started Speak Up, Speak Out based on the death of George Floyd, and his death was caused by a police officer. So this kind of started it all. Most of our CPS schools have resource officers in them, and most of the kids don't know their school resource officer. And when they do see them, it's because it's a bad reason, a bad purpose. So we want to break down the stereotype that all police officers are bad, and we want to also break down the stereotypes that all Black kids are bad because we are Black. We would like for CPD to join, to be able to come to all school events out of uniform and unarmed, because anytime we see them armed or in uniform, we just see the uniform. We don't see them as the person in the uniform. We just see a uniform, and so that frightens us. We would like for training to happen for CPS and for CPD, so that we can get more acquainted with each other, and so that it's not so much tension when a kid is stopped by a police officer or when they're strictly just coming to talk to us as maybe to ask us about our day. We don't just get super defensive or super nervous, because that always turns bad really fast. So that is what we would like for that to happen. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it on to.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jerome Harrison. I attend Western Hills University High School as a sophomore. Outside of school, I'm a part of Speak Up and Speak Out. Inside of school, I am a student ambassador. I'm part of the peer mentoring group, and I am also a member of the National Honor Society. Next slide, please. What's next for Speak Up and Speak Out? Over the course of the past few months, we have created a list of demands to better our school district. Whether it's in our schools or our communities, we have all worked together for change. Moving forward with our list of demands, we would like to see all of our goals met in order to build a better and more concrete education system for younger generations within Cincinnati Public Schools. Our list of demands supports students both mentally and physically to better their future and potential in life. Working together with the Board of Education has instilled strength with all of us. Now I'm going to list some ways that the Board of Education can help us. They can help us by supporting our list of demands, hearing our feelings, ensure that our list of demands are being implemented in our schools, build a better school district for future generations, place policies that abide by our list of demands, improve the diversity of our teachers and our schools. Next slide, please. Thank you for attending our meeting. We hope that you enjoyed it. And now we have an open session for questions. Next slide, please.
Oh, thank you. Assistant Superintendent Murphy, are they available for questions?
Yes, they should be available. I believe they've been brought into this meeting.
Okay. So are they going to be, how do we do this? Okay, so we're going to open the floor for questions or comments from board members. Ms. Bates first, and Ms. Bowers, and then Mr. Messer.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation. And it's really important that we hear from you. And that way we can do something about this. But I wanted to ask you something, because I found this to be really cool. Have you all, and probably some of the adults in the room have heard of this, the YWCA's Racial Equity and Social Justice Council started today. Is anybody familiar with that?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, and so it's I think a statewide program of the YWCA, and it's really an in-depth study of the background of inequities and ways to, well, first the background, and then I expect ways that we can work together as a community. So I just thought if, you in all of your spare time with your multitude of studies and getting ready, that would be a really cool study for students and as well as adults. I did the first day, and it was a study, and actually at least it was over an hour's worth of work in reparations and the history of reparations, and it was super cool. So anyway, not that it's another adult giving you homework, but I just, it's cool for the adults to learn more, and I just wanted to share that for you. And this was a super presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Bowers?
Yes, thank you, everyone. Rachel, is it Kiorlin and Simone? You guys did a very good job presenting. And I want you to know that your demands are duly noted. The one question I do have, we have heard over and over from a group with from the Young Activist Coalition. They actually presented to SAC committee. And the idea, and it was probably not as well reflected in the notes, that we're trying to create an opportunity for you guys to come together, because I think there's this group, but I think it's this other group. Have you guys had any type of conversations with the Young Activist Coalition? Ms. Simone, I see your hand.
I actually have a class. I have a classmate with somebody who's a part of it, and we have communicated about like mixing in and helping each other out before, but we haven't like done anything official yet.
And I'm hopeful that, thank you, Simone, and I'm hopeful that during our Health and Safety Committee, maybe we can bridge those two groups, because it's similar things, but different ways of getting to a certain point. But I think it's appropriate for us to give you that platform, and I'm hoping we can do that in Health and Safety. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Messer, followed by Mr. Lindy.
I'll just echo the comments. Thank you for your leadership on behalf of our entire district coming together to represent the work of the committee. So thank you to each of you coming tonight. And my comment was going to be somewhat similar in that, it's trying to like bring things together so we can actually start to solve some of the challenges. And I can assure you, I think I can look across the table and say you've got a school board here that will support these demands. And now we have to actually get into the work and kind of build those plans to actually go through each of these to take it where they need to be. So hopefully we can engage you in the work to actually bring these to life. But I think, maybe just sharing a little bit more of how you meet, how often you meet, and if there are parents who are on the phone or students who are on the phone or participating in tonight's meeting, if they have input or if they'd like to share with you, maybe you could share with kind of your frequency of meetings and maybe ways that they could connect.
Go ahead, Rachel.
We meet, it used to be every week when we were preparing for our rally, but now it's like every 2 weeks. We meet just to come up with new ideas, come up with new approaches, see if we've seen any changes. You are able to talk to your history teachers and your sports person. Can't think of the name of them right now, sorry. You're able to talk to them to get in contact with Ms. Ashley and or Mr. Will and or Mr. Josh to be a part of Speak Up and Speak Out. And then we do have like links and things on the CPS's website.
Great. So I just want to repeat a couple things I heard. So you said the website is one way to reach out to you. And then
the website, history athletic directors.
Okay, and the athletic directors. That was the second one. Okay, just wanted to be clear about that. Thank you. Mr. Lindy.
Thanks, President Jones. And thank you, all of you. I thought your presentation was just great. And I'd say specifically, there are some things you mentioned that I've heard come up in other conversations before, and some things I haven't, and some things I hadn't really thought about myself before either, and I appreciate that. And just to be really specific, I think the ideas around curriculum, I totally agree, and I've heard them come up before. but some of your ideas around voter registration and training, I thought that was a beautiful idea, and that's something I hadn't thought of. And so I wanted to say thank you. I think for my real question, I think, is to the superintendent, which is about of these 5, which can we do? They all seem great ideas to me. And I was curious what you thought about that.
So we have been working on many of the ideas, and I actually had a chance to meet with these young people maybe a month ago to give them an update. First of all, I want to say that they are very positive and progressive people. And although these are called list of demands, they are not saying this in a harsh or forceful way, but just saying this is what we really want and what we believe in. I know that our deputy superintendent is working on the curriculum, and actually I think there was a presentation that was provided probably around December or so, giving an update about our curriculum. Assistant Superintendent Murphy has been working with the police department to better the relationship with our young people. And as a matter of fact, we actually had a presentation scheduled tonight, but moved it to another day to actually hear feedback from a forum that our assistant superintendent held with the police department as it relates to what our young people are asking for. And so we've been working through the list of demands. Hiring is another area, and the board has been actually talking to us and working with us about this for a number of years. Which other one am I missing? Can you all tell me which one I'm missing?
The peer groups.
Thank you. So they hosted the Speak Up, Speak Out group hosted their rally last week, and we may be able to work out to formalize a collaborative. So each of our high schools, there's a women's group, a men's group, philanthropy group. There are 2 more. College group, and I can't think of the last one, right, and a career. And so we can add this one as a 6th collaborative, so that there's actually an advisor who will work with the young people who can pull them together to actually have these groups within their schools.
Great.
We can make that happen. That's easy. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mr. Morosky.
This is great, y'all. I really appreciate your list of demands, and I appreciate the superintendent's words, but I will invite you to be harsh if it calls for it, because radical change, like centering Black voices and Black students, is going to require oftentimes not being polite, as generation after generation has gone out of their way to make sure Black students underperform their white peers. So I just want to make sure you hear that and know that you do have a board to echo Vice President Messer that supports these demands. The first one, I think that's great. Centering Black voices is what I hear, and that's so cool to hear the superintendent talk about a peer group that could do just that, because if we don't do that within our schools, nothing's going to change. The rally sounded great. The curriculum is well underway. That's really exciting too. Super excited to be able to hopefully vote on that coming up. As you are aware, the anti-racism policy 2256 will help bolster that curriculum so that students are taught Black history, because Black history is American history. So thank you for calling that out, all 3 of you and the rest of your team. Number 4, this board has talked about this quite a bit recently, actually, about how civics and how to be civically engaged has been sorely missing. And I know Ms. Bolton, who taught social studies for a number of years, believes that dearly, and being able to teach more directly how to be civically engaged, I think, is important. The one thing I would suggest, the presentation talked about kids who are voting age and discussing voting and how to register to vote. I would challenge that a little bit and say we need to talk about that in 2nd grade, 3rd grade, maybe kindergarten, all the way through, just so that voting, you know, I know, speaking for me, it was always beaten to my head that was important. My family grew up in a country where they couldn't vote, and so voting was always really important. But that may not always be the case, right? So socializing kids when they're really little, I think, is good. And as far as the police piece, you know, I think this is a good conversation to have. I would love to see whether it's from y'all at Speak Up, Speak Out. As Ms. Bowers has brought up, it's no secret. The Young Activist Coalition, very outspoken group, is very opposed to student school resource officers. I'm on the fence, admittedly. I'd love to see some more research and data that shows the efficacy of the SRO program, because there's a lot that shows it's not. beneficial for kids. And so if we're going to work on that relationship, I would love and need to see some more data that proves it. So thank you so much. Keep it up, and don't be afraid to be a little harsh with us if we need it, all right? Appreciate you.
Hey, Ms. Bolton.
Oh, yes, thank you. And thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the demands. We will work on those, I know. And you will have to keep pushing us to work on it as best as possible, too. So hold us accountable. Just a couple of real quick things, and this is to the three things now. The superintendent mentioned a number of cohorts or clubs in our various high schools. I want to give a shout out to the superintendent who invented that 4 years ago now as a way to begin this effort. So those were early first steps, and greatly appreciated that she did that. The other one is that from my alma mater, which is Aiken, and I won't say swoop loudly, but from my alma mater, they have a wonderful program that I've been hearing a lot about, which is the diversionary court program. And you might be interested in looking into that. It gets pretty good reviews, and it deals with the whole discipline piece, and also in part the relationship with the police officers and our students. But that's at Aiken, and that's a diversionary court. And then to the superintendent, again, as a retired social studies teacher and as a person that was very proud to have the curriculum development of the social studies curriculum 3 years ago, if I recall correctly. And I know Mr. Morosky was part of that too, and Mr. Davis. I'm concerned that the students don't see the results of that relatively progressive, at least as social studies curricula go. I'm still very concerned that they're not seeing it. There's much more that we can do with it. It's just a very exciting thing. I know Mr. Lindy has a number of ideas about how to fix that curriculum or get it better and even more progressive. And he's mentioned that early this past year, but I am very concerned. I don't know if that requires an audit. I don't know if that requires a PD or whatever, but I put the superintendent and those folks in charge. But thank you. Keep at it, keep honest, and make us do right. Thank you.
Thank you. So in closing, again, I want to say congratulations on a successful rally, and thank you for inviting me to participate. We're looking for great things from you guys, and you're starting there. You are starting. And so we really appreciate that you're willing to do this, because it starts with you. So thank you again for your presentation, and we look forward to hearing more from you soon. Thank you. Have a good evening. Wonderful. Okay. We're ready for the second presentation, Superintendent?
Yes, we are. So tonight we have a presentation which will be a health and safety update. And before we actually get into the presentation, it would be remiss of me not to mention our partners, our expert medical team who are here with us tonight. So we're so excited and always deeply appreciative of the health department partnership with us, whether we're talking about safety protocols or the vaccine or the health data. And so very excited and happy to have Dr. Grant Mussman with us this evening, as well as Dr. Maurice Amin. And I see that Dr. Khan from Children's Hospital is in the audience as well. They have been with us from Jumpstart day one. And again, I cannot speak enough about the importance of the relationship and how much we appreciate them being with us this evening. Next slide, please. All right, health update. So go back one slide, thank you. So I believe it was a few months ago, the board gave the administration an assignment. And the assignment was for us to be able to look at and come back with a possible plan to move to more days of instruction beyond 2 days a week, the blended learning model. And so we're going to present some information for you tonight, along with the health data. Another assignment that was given was for us to be able to come back and talk about a criteria to be used to make decisions. And you will hear tonight that there are a lot of things to consider. And one thing is not more right than the other thing. And you will hear ideas in which we can move forward as it relates to a criteria. The third is an update on the CDC considerations. And so again, I'm extremely excited and happy to have our healthcare professionals here with us this evening to help us with this presentation. Next slide, please. So I'm a Holds Apart person, and so last week we began our conversation talking about this kind of call to action, let's all come together, and it really makes me think about the young people who spoke tonight. One of the things Rachel said is, we all need to work together for change. And so I think that what we're doing is setting the frame with everyone, with the board and the staff, as well as the community, in terms of a way forward. And so we've laid out a timeline that will actually get us into the next school year, and that's the future of CPS. And it really it's really centered around restoring hope. So by before the end of this month, thank you, Susan Bunty and the health department, all the staff members who wanted to be vaccinated will have been fully vaccinated with 2 doses of their vaccine. So we're very happy and excited about that. Yeah, thank you. And we do need to have a special presentation resolution for the health department for that huge lift that they did to get this all done. I mean, it's been fabulous. So we need to do that. In addition, in this month, we will provide for you, our Deputy Superintendent, an update on the Summer Scholars Program, which is really about closing the gap for many of our young people. And then how do we move forward with the decision in terms of more days of instruction? Before we leave the month of March, we will also present to the board next week an update on the new shore as represented during their visioning session a couple of weeks ago. And so the administration will bring back to the board what we think we heard, and you will give us some feedback, and then we'll take that feedback back and then bring it back to you on the 15th one more time and make sure that we're crystal clear, because we believe that April needs to be a pivotal point in our district. That is the time that we launch and say, here is the vision for the new CPS, and we're all ready and set to go. Next slide, please. So tonight's focus, you can see that there are 3 areas that we're going to focus on. And as we get ready to listen to our experts regarding these 3 areas, it's important to say that tonight is about choice, and the presentation tonight is about choice. I've heard from teachers who have said they really want their kids back in school with them. They need them back more. Teachers have talked about that with the blended learning model, and we had to do it at the time that we did it. It served a purpose, that there are 5 days in which they don't see their children. So 5 days go by until they see their young people again. I've heard from parents through the hearing of the public, as well as through emails and phone calls, that they need more instruction for their young people in person. This is a funny story. I was talking with a kindergarten teacher last week, and he said that he was talking with his little kindergartners about the lunchroom. And they said to him, we have a lunchroom here. So it just goes to show you some of the disconnects that have happened as a result of the situation that we're in. We don't use the cafeteria as we once have used it. And so our little kindergartners didn't even know that there was a cafeteria. Again, tonight is about choice, and our Chief Strategy Officer, Sarah Trumbull Oliver, is going to begin our presentation and then hand it over to our medical experts, and I'll come back to close this out. Thank you.
Good evening. So we are going to start off with the assignment to review the CDC's most recent considerations. Next slide, please. So 2 weeks ago, the CDC released new considerations for schools, and it includes a list of essential elements for safely operating schools, as well as additional prevention measures. And Dr. Amin is actually going to review this in a few moments. It also includes a brand new correlation of thresholds linked to suggested learning modes, so virtual, hybrid, and full in-person. And they base it on two community measures: the 7-day total of new cases per 100,000 and the positivity rate. And so the most important example is that the CDC suggests hybrid learning levels at all grade levels with strict 6-foot distancing until a community is below the equivalent of 7 daily new cases per 100,000. And for comparison, the Harvard new guidance for strict 6-foot distancing is much higher at 100 daily new cases per 100,000. And our current for the city is 16.9. Next slide, please. And so it's important to remember that these are considerations and not requirements for school districts in the United States. And having balance and knowing what's best for your community and how effective your safety protocols is also important. And as we have presented all the way back to the summer, we're considering how to balance COVID health risks with academic and social risks. Next slide, please. So let's look at some of the academic risks. This was a report released by ODE several weeks ago about the effects of the pandemic on the schools across Ohio. Enrollment in Ohio public schools is down 53,000 students, or 3%. Chronic absenteeism increased by 13% in urban schools, 16% for Black students, 9% for Hispanic, and 6% for white students. On the fall third grade ELA test, there was less participation and a decrease of 8 percentage points in proficiency. Black and Hispanic students saw a decrease of 12 and 10 percentage points respectively. Next slide. At CPS, our fall third grade ELA test, we decreased participation from 99% to 77%, and we decreased in proficiency rate from 38% last year to 21% this year. Next slide. Student attendance decreased from 91% last year before COVID to 86% this year. Next slide. So we also must consider the social emotional risk for kids not being in school. And so Dr. Mussman is going to present the social and emotional considerations, followed by Dr. Vanderhoff from the Ohio Department of Health with an update on virus variants, and then Dr. Amin.
Thank you, members of the board. Thank you, Superintendent. So I want to talk a bit about social and emotional considerations and risk for different modes of learning. And I need to start by acknowledging that there is a lot we don't know about this. The impact of distance versus in-school learning is really difficult to measure and parse out from the current situation. Concern for a disparate impact of the pandemic and associated school closures on different populations and populations who have faced inequities has been raised by organizations such as the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Ohio Department of Health, and the CDC. And there is some early evidence of social and emotional harm from the pandemic in general. We could go to the next slide. So in general, nationally, there has been a 24% increase in mental health emergency department visits for children 5 to 11 in the United States, and 31% for older children. Now, this may not be true in Cincinnati. So at Children's Hospital, they are looking into this and looking at their numbers, and early preliminary data suggests that they may not be seeing this same increase. Another measure of the impact of the pandemic on children is the food insecurity rate, which has gone from 14 to 18% in Hamilton County, according to the Association of Food Banks, which is an increase of approximately 13,000 households. So in summary, concern has been raised about the social and emotional impact of distance learning versus in-school learning, but it may be some time before we can parse that out exactly from the background of the pandemic in general. And if you want to go to the next slide, I believe we have Dr. Vanderhoff, who is the Chief Medical Officer of the Ohio Department of Health.
Okay, we're going to work through our technical difficulties, and Dr. Ramin will come up.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having our Cincinnati Health Department team. We're very happy to be here. Shall we move to the next slide? So I just wanted to go over, we've seen the information about measures to inform school planning. And so I just wanted to review some of these measures that we have been looking at. And these are considerations based on primary and secondary measures. So for the primary, we look at number of school cases and quarantine cases among our staff and students. And we look closely at in-school transmission and the number of in-school transmission cases. We look at the staffing levels. Are there enough staff in the school to adequately meet the needs, and adherence to the protective measures. Secondary measures include the rate of new positive cases in our community and the Ohio Public Health Advisory System. Next slide, please. So I think we've seen this in previous presentations, but just wanted to remind everyone the Swiss cheese metaphor. So when you look at single interventions, no one single intervention is protective, and there's many holes in the process. But when you link all of the protective measures together, that helps to what we say is reduce the risk of transmission. And those are looking at social distancing, masking, hand washing, and all the measures that we've been talking about. And next slide, please. And now we can add an additional layer of protection, which is the vaccination amongst our teachers. Next slide. So I just wanted to highlight some of the social distancing guidance between our agencies. So the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have said that 6 feet or is the greatest protective measure. The American Academy of Pediatrics had said 3 to 6 feet if 6 feet is feasible. Otherwise, 3 feet would be acceptable. Ohio's Department of Health has adopted both policies, saying that we know that 6 feet is the safer route, but if that's not possible, then a minimum of 3 feet is also acceptable. And Harvard has also said 3 feet for younger students and 3 feet for high school students, unless the rate of transmission in the community is above 100 per 100,000. And with all these pieces of guidance, what is equally important are the mitigation strategies that occur in the school, and that the guidance is used to help support the school and what the community and what the students and staff need. Next slide, please. So the essential strategies, as we've mentioned before, that universal masking, even while speaking, hand washing, bathroom hygiene, proper ventilation, physical distancing, isolation and quarantine, and following those close contact protocols, contact tracing protocols as closely as possible, and cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities. Additional strategies include the diagnostic testing, the vaccination, and screening. And so CPS is working through all those that have a check mark. They've successfully vaccinated the staff who want to be vaccinated. They're doing the diagnostic testing in collaboration with Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and they're looking at doing screening testing amongst their students. So they're working very well on the mitigation strategy. Next slide. So I just wanted to highlight where we are in the community level. Over the last month, we've seen a steady decline in our COVID cases in the city of Cincinnati. We're about 17 per 100,000 as of today. Next slide, please. And for our positivity rate for the city of Cincinnati, we've seen a decrease to 7.6. And for Hamilton County outside of the city, we're at 7.3. Next slide. So I just wanted to highlight some of the data that between our partners and the health department have been able to capture. And so the first bullet point is talking about where school districts in our region have been going in-person learning. And they looked at schools who have had 3 to 6 feet, students that are 3 to 6 feet, and students that have been 6 feet. And they found that there's no significant difference until up to a point where our community rate was about 50 per 100,000. So with that, there's some limitations. So what we don't know is of the schools who were 3 to 6 feet, how many were 3 feet, how many were 5 feet? We just know they were in that range. We also don't know is the school cases, was that due to in-school transmission or was that a household transmission? That's not, significant, determined. The second piece is looking at the non-public schools in the city of Cincinnati. Overall, we've had no school closures. There has been some classroom closures, mainly in the lower school, at the pre-K elementary classrooms, where they've identified a case, and just as an extra precautionary measure, they closed the classroom just to be safe. They've had limited in-school transmission. Most of the transmission has occurred within either extracurricular activities, any social events, or household transmission. And the limitation here is that we don't know which classrooms were 3 feet or which classrooms were greater than 6 feet. That's the summary for the health data. Thank you.
So it looks like we did lose Dr. Vanderhoff off of the virtual meeting, and so we'll get the questions about the variants addressed as soon as we reconnect with him. So next slide, please. So we've heard from our regional health experts that they recommend using school measures as the primary criteria for making decisions. And now that we're back in session, it's possible for us to utilize our own data, as shown on the slide here, to make decisions about the amount of in-person learning choices we can offer. Before we had our own CPS data, we were relying on community measures. But now that we have more relevant data about whether we are operating safely, we submit for your consideration using this criteria to make our decisions. Number of in-school transmissions, percent of implementation of safety protocols, number of classes closed due to a cluster, number of positive cases for students and staff, and then staff attendance for certificated and civil service. And then once we get our screening testing program in place, which is in progress, the percent of those screening testing results that are positive. Next slide, please. So how will we monitor that our safety protocols are mitigating the risk from the community cases? And we've been doing this monitoring so far. These are our data sources: the daily huddles with the health department, our CPS COVID dashboard, our safety hotline, our daily staff safety reports, safety huddles with principals, and the safety reports that are reported to the union. We will also be able to use the screening testing results to monitor any asymptomatic in-school transmissions once that program is in place. Next slide, please. So we began to ask ourselves what would have to be true for us to offer families a choice for 5-day-a-week in-person learning. And it's these mitigation strategies: masking, hand hygiene, ventilation, physical distancing to the maximum extent possible, isolation and contact tracing, diagnostic testing, and staff vaccinations. Next slide, please. So now that we have been in blended learning and we are confident about our safety protocols, we would like to present an option on how we could offer a choice to families for either a full 5-day-a-week in-person or full distance learning. Each family can decide based on their own family situation and how their children learn best. The 5-day-a-week in-person choice includes all of the CDC safety guidelines. However, the physical distancing will be to the maximum extent possible in the space and may not be 6 feet in the classrooms and on buses. The distance learning choice is either Cincinnati Digital Academy or distance learning from the homeschool using Schoology. And our Office of Communication Engagement is conducting a parent and staff survey to determine the level of interest in these learning choices, and we'll have those results by next Monday. Next slide, please. And before I turn it back over to the superintendent, we've reviewed the defined academic and social risks for less than full in-person learning. We have all of the essential mitigation strategies in place, and on top of that, our staff will have maximum immunity by March 19th. That's 2 weeks after the last people get their second dose. And we're in the planning stages of a screening testing program that will allow us to monitor asymptomatic cases. So we are bringing forward for consideration a way to offer family choice of either distance learning or 5-day-a-week in-person learning based on their family situation and how comfortable they are with the safety protocols and less than 6 feet distancing. And Superintendent?
Thank you. Next slide, please. So in summary, this is a balancing act. And we have to be able to weigh very carefully our ability to be able to manage and mitigate situations and circumstances. And we believe that we can do that with our partners. No threshold will be 100% assured. The information and data is changing on a regular basis. The thresholds are shifting on a regular basis as well. What we can do right now is to offer our families options and choices within our district that will fit their needs. Our last slide offers you the references that have been used to pull all of this information and work together. So again, we could not do this work without the joint partnership with our health department, as well as Children's Hospital and all of our other partners. So thank you so very much. Do you know if we were able to get Dr. Vandehart back on? No. Okay. So we will definitely work to get your questions answered regarding the variant. And that concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent, and thank you to our health experts. So at this time, what we'd like to do is to offer the board opportunity to ask questions of our health experts. But I'm also asking the board that, you know, to kind of hold on to any general comments and discussion until after we hear hearing of the public. So that'll actually be the topic. As we move into discussion, it'll be the first topic under board matters, so we can talk about the information tonight. But right now, this is just sort of a question and answer period for the local health experts. So we're going to open that up. Okay, we'll start with Ms. Bolton, followed by Mr. Morosky.
I have a question about a question. The questions that we submitted today, is that what we're asking, or are those going to be
Let me ask the superintendent. You're right. We did submit questions, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
So Dr. Amin and Dr. Musman, do you have any responses? Yes? Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe that's a good place to start. Okay. Dr. Amin? Mr. Morosky, do you have a question, or do you want to wait after this part is done?
I have questions, yeah, but I can't wait till this is done.
Okay.
Perfect. So should we just, I guess we'll start with your questions, I think.
Okay.
So the first question was to explain what is the most recent CDC guideline and justification or explanation for having differences between K through 8 and 9 through 12 students concerning social distancing. So it's the AAP guideline, the American Academy of Pediatrics, that actually separates out K through 8 versus grades 9 through 12, as K through 8 being 3 to 6 feet and 9 through 12 as 6 feet, but they don't explicitly state their rationale. What they do say is that there is likely a greater impact of physical distancing on risk reduction in secondary schools, and that current evidence for K through 8 schools shows that the majority of transmission occurs primarily between the adults, mainly the teachers. And then I don't know how we want to do this, if we want to just go in the order that
Yeah.
switch off. Let's do that.
So the next question was asking about reasons of how and why CPS has success regarding spread within our athletic programming. So there has been transmission within the athletic programs. However, they've been able to work closely with our school nurses in identifying transmission, and also working with the athletic staff to make sure that the students are in quarantine in a timely manner. So the next question is about what would your recommendations for our summer extended learning sessions? What should be the general health outline for that programming? So we would recommend that you'd follow the same protocols as you are during the school year. And then there was just, I think, a comment about there's some hope of using the summer extended learning sessions to catch up and even get ahead for the 21-22 school year, physical and mental health checks and services for our students and families. So the next question, I think we just needed some clarification on. It was, what must we do June 1st to be ready to open at 1 to 4 or 5 on our current opening date in mid-August? Would it make sense to begin earlier in August or start later in August?
My interest there was that, okay, we get through the school year, and regardless of whether or not we have the summer program or not, on June 1, what do we need to be doing to get ready for the next school year safely? But then also, does it make sense to start earlier than maybe our mid-August, or would it make sense to start later to be the safest we could be for the next school year?
Yeah, so I think, just time will tell there. I think, planning at starting at the expected time would probably be sufficient at this time.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So our next question was from Pamela Bowers. As we have maintained the CDC guidelines inclusive of 6 feet social distancing as the standard for in-person learning, how does the Swiss cheese concept strengthen the idea of 3 feet social distance now that teachers are close to be fully vaccinated? And, just like you saw on the slide, the more layers that are in place, the safer that, the more protected that we are. The CDC guideline, for example, considers measures such as testing of symptomatic students or screening testing or vaccination as additional measures. which are not part of their core toolkit. So as we have those layers in place, that's just more layers. And, no layer is perfect, I think, is we want to make sure is well understood. But the more you have, the better. Let's see. I think hopefully we can get Dr. Vanderhoff on the line to answer some of the questions about the variants. There's a question from Mr. Morosky about the long-term lasting effects of the virus on children. And so it's not completely clear. There are case reports of long-term cardiac effects in small numbers of children, but there's no way to compute an incidence from a case report. And then there's the multi-inflammatory, the MISC. And again, we don't really know what the incidence of that is. It may be useful to have an infectious disease expert give a presentation about that. Okay. And so our next question was, we talk a lot about the mental health benefits of being in the classroom, and are there concerns about the adverse effects on children who are scared to go back? And I think that's a great question. It is reasonable to be concerned about the possibility. It's definitely, I think, as we all know, a time of really high anxiety, just in general, and children pick up on that very well. That is known. I don't know how to quantify this in a way that you could compare the stressors of being out of school against anxiety for possibly going back, or what if you've been in 2 days and now it's 5 days. So I don't really know how to answer that part. I think it is important to know that nationally and in Cincinnati probably reflects this somewhat. 35% of children who access mental health services do so exclusively in the school, and 57% do so partially.
President Jones?
Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up. I appreciate that, Dr. Larson. The reason I had asked that is so the number that you had cited, with which I'm familiar, the 24% uptick in the ED visits. I think the point I was trying to make, and I brought this up at the last meeting to my colleagues, is that oftentimes being back in school is used as a panacea for mental health issues. And I think it's important to remind everybody that that 24% number is not broken out. We don't know what those are. It's not 24%. And the assumption oftentimes when you put up a slide that quick and move on is that it's because kids aren't in school. That's not the case. We're in a pandemic and people are feeling a ton of trauma everywhere. And there's no panacea anywhere. I just think I wanted to make sure that was front of mind. So I appreciate your response.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to make sure that is clear. That's, the stress of the pandemic in general is something that's very difficult to separate out. There was one last question here, which was, is there any change to the recommended distance of 6 feet? And I think we've covered that pretty well in our presentation. The Ohio Department of Health has given us guidance in their written notes that 3 to 6 feet is a workable solution with correctly implemented mitigation strategies.
Okay, any other questions? I just have a general one, and I know that Dr. Minderhoff was supposed to talk about the variant, but is there any information that you can offer? I think there is a general concern about that hitting us now, time frame from when it's been here. Do we have any idea what it looks like and how it manifests itself and the impact overall? And I don't know if you could answer that, but just general information about the variant.
Yeah, so I think what I can answer is that there is some suggestion that the variants spread a bit faster, and there's question about whether or not there is a higher mortality rate or whether it's just that there's more people infected. But exactly what those numbers are or how that breaks out or how each variant relates to those. I can bring that back to the board. I'm not prepared to comment on that now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lindy?
Thanks, President Jones. This could be for Dr. Mussman or for Dr. Amin, but I think this is the, forgive me if this may feel like an unfair question. I just think it's the honest one that's on everybody's mind, which is if you were sitting in our shoes, what do you think the right thing to do is?
I think it's really important that this decision be made by the folks who are the stakeholders here. I am a CPS parent, but I'm just one CPS parent. So I think it's really hard for me to put myself in that role and think about what I might say without being somewhat biased in my opinion.
Good answer.
No, he's too smart for that. He's too smart for that.
Okay. Do we have Mr. Morosky?
I didn't know if this was time for more questions.
For our
Is
yes,
it time for
yes.
more questions? Okay, so we've gone through the list.
I'm assuming so, yes. Go ahead.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
Okay, cool. Just a few for clarity. So I love the whole idea of choice in our presentation, the CPS slides. I love the idea of choice. I find, and we can talk about this in board matters more, of course, but I do think there's a difference between the spectrum of choice and real choice. And if Black families are more prone to getting this disease and want to stay home and have to do TDA or Schoology, the choice isn't as robust as maybe it could be, but we'll talk about that later. I'm curious what our experts recommend for meal times. If we start sending more students back when without masks, is it okay indoors at a few feet apart? Should they eat outdoors? Is there any guidance on meal time? And these are all things, President Jones, I do have a few questions, but to be clear that they're going to be really helpful for me to be able to make some kind of decision. I need to have some of these answered.
Yeah, so I think whenever possible, it's great to be outdoors, but it is recommended to be at 6 feet when eating lunch.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Amin. Okay, we did that. We talked about that. We did that. Actually, I don't think I have as many as I thought, President Jones. A couple clarifying questions. So the Harvard study that is referenced, it's not really a study though, is it? It's an opinion, right? It wasn't a study by definition. I just want to be clear about that with the 100 cases piece, just so I know we're making decisions based on all the facts. It wasn't a study, was it?
No, it was not a study.
Okay.
And it's not clear where those thresholds come from in any of the guidelines.
Okay.
At least they're not referenced.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make that clear and also make it clear that Hamilton County's cases are 121 out of 100,000. So I know the city one looks better, but today it's 121 out of 100,000. I want to confirm that.
For
Hamilton County.
Average or
for Hamilton.
For the total.
For the 7 day.
I haven't actually looked at the Hamilton County cases today.
Cool. I appreciate that, Dr. Amin. So I did, and I think it's important, again, that we have all that out there. The 16 number looks great. It's 121 for 100,000, a moving 7 day average. So I just want to make sure that that's out there before we have a more robust discussion. And then the last one, and I think this is probably the biggest one.
Can you hold on 1 second? Yeah. Ms. Trimble Oliver, were you going to respond to that?
If I may, so the 16 is 1 day, and the 120 is the whole 7 days, right? So just comparing apples to apples.
No, the 120, right? But the what we were using to make our decision, at least in the past, was the 7 day average.
This 7 day, 1 day average. I know that's confusing, but
that is confusing.
It's a 1 day daily. It's confusing because the CDC and Harvard use two different measures. One is a 1 day average, which is averaged over 7 days, and one is a complete 7 day sum.
Right.
So it's going to be confusing, and so it's got to compare the apples to apples.
Right. And so Well, it still would be different because 121 is the county's 7 days. So the city, though, would be 16.9 or 0.7 plus all the other six successive days. I just want to be clear because I think there are people in the public that assume we are using the 7-day average, which is what's often referenced. And so when they see a 16.7 number, so that's perfect. That's great. But as long as we're talking about different things, which is fine. Initially, I was under the impression we were talking about 7-day averages, but that's fine if we're not now. Okay. But the last one is the most important one is what studies show that 3 feet spacing is okay? If there are any studies that show that.
So I think there haven't been very many studies that look at that. I think they're comparing the 3 to 6 versus the 6. And I don't know of very many that can tell us definitively that 3 feet is okay.
Thank you, Dr. Amin.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay. Additional questions for our experts? Ms. Bates.
Yes, and I assume this data will be coming later. It was referred to in the PowerPoint, but I know there haven't been formal studies done on the 3 to 6 feet, but we know that there's data from all the school districts in the area. And and we know many of those schools are distanced at 3 feet, and there is data for that. So I'm not sure if you would call that a study. I did request that. I requested it today, so I'm not expecting it, right at the tip of your tongue.
So for the non-public schools, we just don't know who has.
For the public school districts in Hamilton County that are not Cincinnati Public.
Okay. So there, that data looked at who was 3 to 6 versus 6, but it didn't look at 3 only and 6 only. So we don't know what the transmission rate was for 3 only versus 6 only. Does that make sense?
Right. Is there a way to find that out?
We can ask. We can check with our partners what else they know, but we can get back to you whether that's possible or not. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions before we turn them loose? Okay.
President Jones, I will say, and I'm trying to come up with a way to get you your answers regarding the variant, because I'm very disappointed that we weren't able to make the connection with the doctor from the Ohio Department of Education. And Sarah, we were not able to get him by phone either. No. I just want you to have that information before next Wednesday.
We can send the questions to ODH and we can get your responses.
Thank you. That would be helpful. Okay. All right. So if there are no other questions, we want to thank Dr. Mussman, Dr. Amin, Dr. Khan up in the audience. Yes. And I just want to say again, we've said it, but I'm going to say it again, that we appreciate the partnership. That's been really consistent. It's been helpful. We ask tough questions because it's just a tough situation that we're in. And so we do appreciate your taking the time out to come and share the information as much as you're able to. We appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So what we're going to do, we are going to open this up for a broader discussion, but we are going to go to hearing of the public at this time, and we'll do our discussion following that. So we are now at the item on our agenda for hearing the public. Consistent with the state's direction to minimize public gatherings, we are convening this video conference call to include opportunity for public comment. Each speaker will limit their time to 1 minute, 30 seconds, and will direct all comments to the presiding officer. Consistent with the board's bylaws, the board has the ability to limit the hearing of the public on any single issue and will exercise the right to do so if needed.
Might be on now.
I'm sorry? Oh, okay. We respectfully ask employees of the district to direct all questions, concerns, and comments regarding district return to in-person learning to your building representative, your building leadership, or the district safety hotline. Once a request to speak has been granted, you will be invited to enter. Please click on the camera icon to go interactive. Provide your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if you want a direct response to any questions you might have. This request is consistent with board protocol and we appreciate your compliance. We reserve the right to not permit you to speak if you do not comply. Again, each speaker will have 1.5 minutes to speak and may only speak once. When the timer goes off, your time is up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. After speaking, you will briefly see the welcome screen again as you transition back to the live stream meeting. We ask that your public commentary be respectful of all those listening in, and remember, we are an institution of learning and our students are watching. Thank you.
Good evening. Our first speaker is Richard Ganulin, followed by Amy Parks Ely. Go ahead, Richard.
Good evening. Thank you. Can you see me?
We cannot yet. There you go. Thank you.
Okay. Hi. So I am Richard Ganulin. I represent Walnut Hills High School Parents for Remote Learning 2020 to 21. And several weeks ago, scientists presented data to this school board indicating that the viral exposure when a student is 3 feet away from another student is, conservatively speaking, 9 times greater than 6 feet. 4 times greater. And if the student is 2 feet apart, it's 9 times greater. 4 to 9 times greater viral exposure when you put the students 2 to 3 feet apart than if they're 6 feet apart. And we've not received any rebuttal data to that. And nobody on this board would cluster your chairs 2 to 3 feet from other board members, take off your masks, all of you take a sip of your water at the same time, and create that magnified viral exposure. So there is no data, no scientific analysis whatsoever. And I think you heard confirmation tonight from the Cincinnati Health Department that there are no studies establishing the health and safety of the kind of distancing, this nostril to nostril distancing that you are talking about or have talked about for Walnut Hills High School. And our focus is Walnut Hills High School. There has also been
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Amy Parks Ely, followed by Sean Kelly. Go ahead, Amy.
Hi, good evening. So I'm Amy Parks Ely from the Kilgore community. This past year, we realized has been really challenging, but reactive planning has resulted in a lot of families fleeing the district and a lot of divisiveness. And it's clear one solution for all isn't working. So we're encouraged to hear the presentation tonight about choice. And as a solution, we're requesting a comprehensive plan for the next 21-22 school year, hopefully to be committed to and shared publicly by March 15th so that families can be informed and planned accordingly. We're requesting that the plan include in detail, 1, an option for 5 days in-person instruction, 2, a remote teacher-led instruction option. The CDA is not currently a viable option for many of our families, and a procedure in place in the case of quarantine. We think the plan should include creative solutions in collaboration with parents in the community, principal empowerment so that they can be in charge of their staff and part of the solutions, benchmarks and best practices from local schools, and address revisions needed in the contract with the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers where it might be preventing flexibility or solutions, like not allowing teaching in quarantine or mandating sick days, for example, and creative solutions for space. So we really believe that the future is now, and the time to start leading is now to make CPS the leader in the city that it can be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sean Kelly, followed by Ilya Zelinsky.
Good evening, board members. This is Sean Kelly, a CPS parent with students at Walnut Hills and Fairview. And I just want to thank all responsible for the great survey that came out this evening for Walnut Hills families. It's the first survey, and I think it's just a great step to give families choice and to give families options and let them truly express what their children are going through and what is best for their family moving forward. So thank you for getting that out the door, and I look forward to hearing the results of the survey. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Ilya Zelinsky is followed by Elke Brunsbeck.
Hi, I'm Ilya Zelinsky. I'm a parent of 10th graders at Walnut Hills High School. And I just wanted to also thank you for beginning to really look at the science and give stakeholders a voice and hopefully a choice. One thing that I wanted to make clear in our assessment of risk is that, yes, we all realize that we can't be completely safe while the virus is still around, and nothing is going to be risk-free. But we have seen that there's spread within schools once schools were opened up at CPS. And we have to think of not only the teachers, which is great that they're immunized, but the kids and also the parents, the grandparents, the community, because CPS serves the community that the children belong to as well. And the Board of Education has to consider community spread as well. We have to realize that we're adding risk to kids when we tilt the balance in favor of just getting kids to school as soon as possible, for as long as possible. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Elke Brunsbeck is followed by Joya Loeb.
You have to unmute.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello, go ahead.
I'm frozen.
There you are. There you are.
I'm on?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Elke Buschbeck. I'm a parent of two at Walnut Hills High School. I'm also a scientist. I'm a professor at the University of Cincinnati. I first want to thank the board members who supported the petition on February 8th and kept Walnut Hills families safe and online, and I truly appreciate that you're now talking about choice. I do have some concerns. For example, one of your criteria has been that there's low spread between kids, but unless you start routinely testing all kids, you wouldn't even know that, right? Because kids often are asymptomatic, and so I'm concerned that them bringing COVID home to parents and grandparents, and in that case, they would get sick and not even know that they got it from the kids. So to get a full handle, I feel like you have to test them. I'm also concerned. I'm wondering that your proposal doesn't have any strict rules in regards to social distancing. And I was wondering if there's any minimum distance that you say you will honor at all distances, all cases. For example, would you ever allow a school to open with less than 3 feet separation? Finally, I really appreciate that you look at multiple studies, and I appreciate that you already realized that they're not all equal and some are more data-driven than others. I find that the CDC guidelines seem to be really good, and they seem to be crystal clear that online should be right now. For many of the high schools in the districts, including Walnut Hills High School, they are saying explicitly physical distancing of 6 feet or more is required. And for any region that by the CDC is rated either red or orange. And so we are still in red.
Thank you.
And stress
Joya Logue is followed by Anna Schlosser.
Hello. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Joya Logue, and I'm a parent to 2 Walnut Hills High School students and 1 Hyde Park School student. I want to first thank the board for making the right decision to keep our students safe by remaining virtual at Walnut Hills until safety measures can be met and ensured in an already very extremely overcrowded building. Our students are getting a full week of virtual instruction, which is much needed. I want to thank the Walnut Hills High School teachers who go above and beyond every day to engage our students virtually. They're doing an amazing job. I also would like to ask the board to let science and guidelines by our experts in the field continue to lead the way for making decisions as you've presented them tonight. That's been great to hear. And I think especially as variants move into our city, that the optimal social distancing that is needed at the high school level be evaluated. As tonight, Dr. Amin just stated that for a lunch example, indoors, there needs to be 6-foot social distancing. Lastly, I'm asking the board to focus on the upcoming 21-22 school year instead of disrupting the remaining weeks this spring at Walnut, and to make sure that we start making plans and options for all of our students for next fall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna Schlosser is followed by Jillian Whitaker.
Hello, my name is Anna, and I'm a junior at Walnut Hills High School. And I'm here tonight to ask the board whether to continue to keep Walnut Hills remote for the foreseeable future, as well as to ask whether or not the new 5-day-a-week plan applies to Walnut Hills. We saw today that the first strategic goal of the board is student-centered decision-making. You claim to put the students first. As you are surveying students, please survey us students as well and value our input. After all, we are the ones that this major decision affects the most. Many students at Walnut work jobs outside of the school, volunteer in the community, or live with older family members. So sending us back in person not only affects us, but affects our family, teachers, staff, and the greater community. And we talked a lot today about choice, and the choice as we go back into hybrid or in-person models. And I just want to request that any choice for an online option is fair and equitable, which includes things like making sure our classes are available online, ensure that a teacher is actually teaching the class, and that we're receiving equal education time to our peers who would be in person. Keep in mind, the Cincinnati Digital Academy only offers 13 out of the 35 AP classes that Walnut offers, and we have not seen a clear plan on to how this online learning model would affect students like me who are in these AP classes. Remote learning has worked well for 7 months so far at Walnut Hills. Going back in person or in hybrid means less time with our teachers, less collaboration with each other, and a much higher chance of contracting COVID-19. So please continue to keep Walnut Hills remote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jillian Whitaker is followed by Ruth DeBono.
Hi, this is Julia Whitaker. I'm a parent at Walnut, Covedale, and Tater Montessori. I want to just first off thank Mike for asking some hard questions tonight. It seems like a lot of times when the doctors come in, certain board members like to cherry pick the data, and I think that there are hard questions that need to be asked, and I appreciate everyone who is asking them. Additionally, I would like to, as usual, promote my preference and my students' preference for keeping Walnut remote, and also for an equitable online option for other schools. Currently, I have one student in a school who gets 2 hours of instruction a week and nothing but paperwork other than that. This is an ongoing problem that you've also been faced with the CDA even before COVID. So please take this time to consider how you can revamp that moving forward. I know that it's a giant equity issue and that it's been addressed multiple times by the parents, but it's not going away. Finally, again, I would call for the resignation of Melanie Bates. I find it extremely disappointing that no one on the board is addressing the comments that were made by her 2 weeks ago. This needs to be addressed in a board meeting with the public, and everyone's opinions on what was said needs to go on record. It is a dereliction of duty at this point to allow her to remain on the board. Thank you for your time.
Ruth DeBono is followed by Braden Wormley.
Can you?
Go ahead, Mr. Bono.
Okay. My name is Ruth DeBono. I'm a junior at Walnut Hills High School. And in terms of the plan we have been talking about with COVID, I think it's great to give people the opportunity to make a choice. That choice needs to be based on science and studies and reasoning, not just people's opinion and desire to have our students in schools. It still needs to be safe, and it still needs to be a safe choice and a safe option. Additionally, in response to the Speak Up, Speak Out students' relationship with the CPD, I think it's important to mention that, and I'm part of YC, and in our conversations with many community members, people have great relationships with SROs and look up to them, and even people who may have been punished by SROs, some of them had bad experience, but some of them even still liked the SROs. It is not an issue of how strong the relationships are. If you want to make strong relationships, that's fine. The problem, however, is the punishment and criminalization of our students. Even if we have great relationships with our police, in their own mission statement, they state that they are police first. Their goal is to students and be punished and criminalized, and not in a place where they should be taken out of class and punished or arrested and referred to the police. In CPS schools, Black students are referred to the police, expelled, and suspended at much higher rates than white students.
Thank you, Mr. Bono.
Our next speaker is Braden Wormley, followed by Amy Boyne.
Hi, I'm Braden Wormley. I'm a senior at Walnut Hills, and I'm vehemently opposed to Walnut returning to in-person school. The main issue I take with going back to school comes from the ethical implications of the board's decision, if such a decision is made, to force us to return. The implication is that a school board is able to knowingly and willfully endanger the lives of students for whom they work. The members of the school board may have been elected by the parents, but they are elected for the students, and such a decision would contradict that. On that note, we should be asking ourselves why we elected the members of the school board. We, as a community, entrusted them with our children. That is to say, we entrusted them with our collective future. So I now ask all the parents in attendance, what sort of conduct do you want out of the protectors of your future? What characteristics, what virtues must they display in a crisis for you to trust them to handle the next crisis? Additionally, in reference to Speak Up, Speak Out, I want to say that I'm a little disappointed that the general student population wasn't really consulted in any meaningful way. I think if we were able to organize, we could have represented the views of all of the students, and we could have had much more powerful demands.
Thank you.
Amy Boyne, followed by Kristen Copeland.
Hello. I would like to first thank Superintendent Mitchell for securing vaccines for all 6,500 staff members. Additionally, thank you to all teachers in the district for all of your hard work this year. Thank you to everyone that we rely on to get this important decision right. The lives of the students and their families are at stake, and I'm here to continue the dialogue about a safe return to Walnut Hills High School. The data cited this evening doesn't support a return for high school students utilizing a 3-foot physical distance, full stop. Not the outdated American Academy of Pediatrics guidance from May of 2020, and not the recently updated CDC guidance. Yesterday, CNN's Dana Bash reported New York State school superintendent said it would be impossible to return to 5 days for elementary and middle school students using a 6-foot metric. And so she pressed Dr. Fauci on the record to say 3 feet was safe. He refused to do that. With the many new variants and risk posed to unvaccinated students and families, now is not the time to let our guard down. Let's plan for next year. It is expected the next 5 to 14 weeks will be really hard on younger individuals and those 65 and under due to the widespread UK variant. I do hope to get an update next week on the variants as well. And I just want to finish with this. Do you have a plan in place to address the many new variants? Finally, we appreciate our daughter's continuity of education.
Thank you.
We have Kristen Copeland, followed by Kayla Reedy.
Good evening, board members. I'm Kristen Copeland, and I am speaking on behalf of my 11th and 9th graders who are currently at their socially distanced musical practice at Walnut Hills, and encourage you to check out the musical, which is available for live streaming this weekend. But they have been at that rehearsing at all of these board meetings. They would want me to say virtual is working really well for them. Teachers are doing an amazing job. My kids would want me to tell you that anything less than 4 days face-to-face with their teachers is really not acceptable given the caliber, the difficulty of their classes. And then for in-person, less than 6 feet is not safe, particularly for high school students and for high rates of community spread, as the medical experts said. Specifically, 6 feet is not safe, or less than 6 feet is not safe for meal times, as Dr. Amin said tonight. One piece that I'll add that my students may not know about quality improvement is to start small, test, and scale. So start with a small group of students, not the largest high school to go in person. Last, I did fill out the survey for Walnut Hills. It was not well worded, and it specifically wasn't at the student level. So I want to thank you guys for keeping my kids' instruction in mind as you make decisions, and I encourage you to, as the other students have asked, to go ahead and survey the students themselves. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Next is Kayla Reedy, followed by Owen DeRico.
Hi, my name is Kayla Reedy, and I am a senior at Walnut Hills High School. I am here today on behalf of Young Activist Coalition to discuss several things, the first of which being the return to school. The new strains that have just been found in Hamilton County will have more severe impacts on children. Continuing in-person schooling, especially at anything below 6 feet, which is the CDC recommendation, is not safe. You must close all schools in CPS before it is too late and a student, family member, or teacher dies. I would like to thank all of our wonderful teachers in CPS for everything you have done for us this year and all of your hard work in this unprecedented situation. The second thing I would like to discuss tonight is the presence of police officers in CPS schools. Black students in CPS are 3 times more likely to be referred to law enforcement officers and 5 times more likely to face exclusionary discipline overall. This is absolutely unacceptable. Additionally, 50% of people who die at the hands of police on a national level have a disability, and Black people with disabilities experience the highest cumulative rate of arrest at 55.2%. By implementing true restorative and transformative justice in CPS, we can and must remove police officers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Owen DeRico will be followed by Vanessa Scachera.
Hello, my name is Owen DeRico. I'm a sophomore at Walnut Hills High School. I'm speaking on behalf of the Young Activists Coalition, and I would like to use this short time I have to dispel several conceptions that seem to exist around our goals and our relationship with Speak Up, Speak Out as a program. First of all, I would like to be exceedingly clear in saying that YAC is not in an adversarial relationship with Speak Up, Speak Out, and our goals are very much one and the same in many areas when it comes to the creation and sustaining of safer and more inclusive school environments, curriculum, and policy. We consider the majority of their demands to be very much necessary for facilitating this, and of course the elevation of the voices of the students who this policy ultimately concerns most directly is highly important. However, this policy is just the beginning of what needs to be done, and I believe that a problem arises when the board utilizes the demands of this group as the be-all and end-all of the board's involvement with this kind of policy, and as a shield from properly and publicly engaging with questions and issues which are less easy or convenient for the board to confront. And when this is combined with a limited range of student involvement, this becomes even more problematic. Second of all, I would like to thoroughly refute the idea that we have ever made the claim or believe that all or even any significant portion of the SROs stationed in schools are bad people on an individual level. However, regardless of individual relationships SROs may have with students and regardless of how good they may be, the statistical realities of vast disparities in how punishment is allocated in this district remains. To engage with these subjects responsibly, the board must be willing to confront uncomfortable subjects. Also, lest anyone forget, Melanie Bates, you need to resign. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vanessa Scachero will be followed by Gilda Vargas Adams.
Good evening, CPS Board of Education and Superintendent. I want to express my appreciation for keeping Walnut Hills remote. I have a few questions and one note. The note is, as far as mental health, there can be other topics related to pandemic that may cause health issues, mental health issues, like maybe parents lost their job or people lost their relatives to the pandemic and many others. So yes, there is an increase in mental health problems, but they may not be because the kids are home from school. The other question is, what does it mean remote school with Schoology? It was not clear. And also, I would like to understand why the Board of Education is not following the CDC guidelines and Dr. Fauci appeals to not open everything all of a sudden, like everybody's doing in the United States, because now the infection are plateauing, they're not going down anymore. That's a problem, because from plateau, we can go up again. Thank you.
Thank you. Gilda Vargas Adams is followed by Olga San Miguel.
Hello, I'm Gilda Vargas Adams. I'm a pediatrician and a parent of Walnut Hills High School students. Once again, I want to appeal to the use of science. Science is real, and there is robust, unbiased guidance regarding COVID-19. The district must demonstrate decision-making that is driven by science, evidence, and rational thought. In this case, it means following CDC guidance in any proposal to return Walnut or any other CPS student to the classroom. Walnut Hills is an outlier and a challenge. These students are profoundly aware of the risks of their high-density school environment, and they are similarly extremely motivated with academics. Their concerns about inadequate physical distancing and slashed instructional hours with a hybrid model are salient and voiced previously in this forum. I ask you to have science guide your decisions, not pressures from the state or the parents who speak loudest, and not to appeal to choice as a way to avoid accountability to science. The CDC's current guidance does not support Walnut students' return to in-classroom learning unless they drop to only 1 day of instruction per week, equating to 6 feet of distance. And no one thinks that is sufficient. With high levels of community spread and highly contagious variants taking hold in Cincinnati, mitigation efforts in keeping with the CDC guidance are imperative. Whatever decisions are made, please let science be your guiding light. Thank you.
Thank you. Olga San Miguel is followed by Bryce Aguiapong.
Hello, and my name is Olga San Miguel Valderrama, and I have a student in Walnut Hills 7th grade. I'm also a professor at the University of Cincinnati. I am deeply concerned about the fact that Walnut Hills High School is the only Cincinnati public school that remains remote. To achieve the district's goal of equity, students at Walnut Hills should be given the option, if they wish, to attend school in person as other students in the district. I am requesting the board and Superintendent Mitchell to please create a concrete and feasible plan to enable the choice of in-person instruction at Walnut Hills during the remaining of the current academic year. But more importantly, is for the board to carefully plan for 5-day in-person instruction for next academic year in August 2021. I would like the board to declare in this meeting a firm commitment from its members and Cincinnati Public Schools to create a feasible plan to reopen Walnut Hills 5 days a week in August 2021. Many parents, including myself, need to know what are the plans for next academic year so we can make informed decisions about our kids. No one in the community can change the risks, the concerns, and the fears by many constituencies in the school. However, the lack of a concrete plan to resolve, for instance, the lack of space or streaming live classes is extremely worrisome. Keeping all children home reduces the risk of the viral transmission, but it increases the risk of other very serious mental, social, and emotional health concerns.
Thank you. Bryce Aguiapong is followed by Holly Miller.
Hello, can you see me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, my name is Bryce Adjapong, and I'm a student who attends Walnut Hills High School. I'm very pleased with the board's decision in keeping us remote and not signaling Walnut out and leaving us with less protection. And I'm ashamed to see that board members were considering sending us back. As we see with the data, the positivity rates and the cases per 100,000 are on a decline, which is a great thing. But remember that these can spike up much faster than they go down, especially in minority communities. I'm glad that we not only have had the opportunity to vaccinate our teachers, but we also have new CDC guidelines that I strongly encourage you to follow. Keep in mind that students and their families will not be able to receive the vaccine for a little while, and that new strains will spread rapidly throughout communities. I urge you all to remember and take pride in what you do as board members. You all are held to a higher standard and elected by the people to protect and care about the students, staff, and the community in general. Yes, that includes grandparents as well. Not just with COVID, but in other aspects that we've seen presented today. I encourage you all to err on the side of caution when it comes to public safety, even if it means we will not make everyone happy. As long as that keeps us safe, because that is your job and that is why you were voted in. And that can be taken away depending on how the public feels with your actions inside and outside of board meetings, because your actions have consequences and they can be fatal. Thank you for listening and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Holly Miller is followed by Carrie Kelly. Holly, you with us?
No. So can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can't see you.
Okay, I don't know if it's going to come up or not. I don't know what's going on. But my name's Holly Miller, and I have 4 graduates from Cincinnati Public School. And I also have a son who attends Dater Montessori, and I also work at Roselawn Condon with medically fragile students. I know last week I talked to the board, so I wanted to just explain my copycat reference. This is what I hold up for students when I want them to copy my behavior. Last week we had behavior that wasn't meant to be copied, and that's kind of what I was alluding to. But this week I want to talk to you about the very real fact that it's very frustrating to hear people talk about Walnut over and over again and the safety measures not being able to met, when this district is well aware that the safety protocol is not being met in the specialized classrooms district-wide. Students are mask exempt. There is no 6 feet of social distancing in these environments, and teachers are sick. In fact, I have a colleague of mine right now hospitalized with COVID. I would like you to know, who works in a specialized unit. So there are real consequences to us in this district. The other thing I wanted to point out is my son began his first week of in-person learning.
Thank you.
Oh,
Carrie Kelly is our next speaker, followed by Luke Bloter.
Hi, I just wanted to say, we're always, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Yeah, just again, thank you to the board and Superintendent Mitchell for hearing the public, as we are all aware that it's not necessary for you to take everybody. I wanted to say that I really appreciate use of science to guide the decision-making regarding Walnut's return to in-person. I think it's really important that you continue to use science and not the opinion of a scientist writing down as an opinion piece to guide those decisions. Last week I did ask if there were going to be any modifications that would come regarding a food plan, eating inside, as I think it's important that we as parents know what we may or may not be sending our children back into if Walnut were to say go blended or 5-day. Just this evening, about an hour ago, in fact, the good doctor said that, Dr. Green said that 6 feet is the guidance, nothing less than. I just wanted to make sure Ms. Bates did hear that, in fact. Also, to the 3 to 6 feet question about community spread, that data was not yet available and that would be forthcoming. So finding that we should base our decisions. I also would like to say that I am so appreciative of our staff and our teachers. I only have students in
Thank
public
you.
schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Luke Blocher. I'm a parent of 2 kids at the Clifton Area Neighborhood School. I'm here tonight in support of a 5-day full-time return for at least elementary age kids, but I support it for all students in the district as soon as it's possible and in all instances this semester. I say that as a parent who believes that it's best for my children, but also as a citizen of the community, articulating what I truly believe to be in the best short and long-term interest of everyone in Cincinnati. I'm also here to support the concept of parental choice. I respect unequivocally and deeply the concerns of families who would prefer to stay remote. I've come by my views honestly and with a lot of reflection, and I have no doubt that those who disagree with me completely did as well. I'm not asking that those of us who would like our children to be in person 5 days a week be able to force that decision on those who don't. But I am asking that those families who want to stay remote do not control the decisions and options for those of us who want to be in person. I want to encourage the administration and the board to find a solution that will allow for school-specific remote participation in parallel with a 5-day in-person option. As it appears, based on tonight's presentation, they are, and I was very glad to see that, as I know many people were. I also want to ask the administration and the board to develop a solution in close consultation with our wonderful teachers, who, of course, are the ones whose teaching skills, much more so than whatever technology is developed, will allow this to work. Let's get these kids who want to be there.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if I'm next. Mika, Quincy?
No, you guys turn your cameras and your
Go ahead.
Liz is up, or Eric Larson is up next.
Eric Larson.
Can you see me all right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. My name's Eric Larson. Thank you to everyone for being here. And I echo all of the compliments to our teachers and staff and everyone else. My daughter attends Walnut. Her mom attended Walnut. Her grandparents went to Walnut. And her great-grandparents went to Walnut. So we have a deep love of the school, the teachers, the staff, and all of the families in our school community. But in accordance with the CDC's updated regulations, we have to oppose going back to Walnut with merely a 3-foot distance. Looking at the CDC's website right now, it was updated on Friday. They clearly speak out still for 6 feet of distance. And I think what I want to make clear, because other people smarter than me, doctors, have made the point already about the 6 feet of distance, is that our younger child is in person at Pleasant Ridge. We're not opposed to going back to school. What we are opposed to is the conditions that would be necessary at Walnut. This is about staying safe. Not only does our love of Walnut run deep, but we love and support our friends and their children, whether they're pushing to return full time or not. But what we're dealing with here and what we're looking for here is a solution for safety. And we're asking the board to create a long-term plan that keeps us safe in accordance with the science. So thank you again to the members of the board and everyone present tonight.
Okay, our next speaker is Yusuf Munir, followed by Mika Quincy.
Hi, my name is Yusuf Munir. I'm a senior at Walnut Hills High School, and I'm the president of Young Activist Coalition. First thing I want to do is focus on a few facts. 1, Black and brown students are disproportionately targeted and punished and criminalized by school resource officers. 2, according to a memorandum of understanding that we received from CPS from you, the district has no control over the SRO program and no oversight capabilities over the program. They have no right to choose how many SROs are in each school or what the SROs do. 3, almost all arrests that happened in CPS schools were done by SROs. And almost all of these arrests were the criminalization of behavior that was previously handled by schools. Specifically, SROs have been given the role of handling petty fights and, as a result, criminalize children and childhood behavior. That's evil. I think it is interesting, though, that one of the Speak Up, Speak Out students mentioned that students don't really interact with the SROs at all because past 6 months, the superintendent and the district have repeatedly told us that we must keep SROs because they have such a great relationship with students. So which is it? Do they or don't they have a great relationship with the SROs? I would like to add, though, that there is no evidence that better relationships with these SROs will improve any of the disproportionate targeting of Black and Brown students, because at the end of the day, it is a systemic issue, not an issue with any of these SROs individually. There is, however, evidence that SROs enact racist violence against children. I would like to add that our demands, YAC's demands and actions, removal of all SROs and punitive discipline, and replacing them with restorative justice practices and mental health.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mika Clincy, followed by Julie Sellers.
Thank you. My name is Mika Clincy. I am a Walnut Hills parent of 2. Thank you for keeping your commitment to keep Walnut Hills virtual as necessitated by the new CDC guidelines, which still have us in red. The CDC announced today that highly contagious variants put us at risk of losing all recent gains in the battle against COVID-19 if we rush to reopen before mass vaccination. The health and safety of our kids and families is not predicated on political expediency. You made a deal with the governor behind closed doors based on a safety plan you knew was impossible to implement at our most overcrowded high school, and now you expect our kids, our families, and our teachers to pay the penalty. Not okay. We've been in this pandemic for a year now, and you haven't made any changes to mitigate overcrowding at Walnut Hills in order to allow students to safely return to facilities in the fall. Your experts just said that the Ohio Department of Health recommends desks at least 3 feet apart, but you told us a few weeks ago Walnut Hills could only be up to 3 feet apart, nostril to nostril. Start slowly. Don't force your largest school into this experiment. 3 weeks ago, you agreed that 3 feet is not safe. Dr. Amin just confirmed this, and apparently Dr. Fauci did as well. A loss of instructional time with teachers in favor of self-taught software school is not equitable. Any plan that gives 5 days of instructional time only to families who are willing to return to overcrowded schools at any cost is not equitable. I received your survey today. It's poorly worded and biased, as if only families that want 5 days a week in school care about mental health. Please revise this survey with viable, equitable options and allow students to respond as well. We applaud your effort to get teachers vaccinated. They are not yet fully immune, and students and most of their family members have had no self-privilege yet.
Thank you. Our last speaker of the evening is CFT President Julie Sellers.
Good evening. I just wanted to say that CFT's always been about opening schools 4 days, 5 days, as long as the community spread was low, which it still isn't low. We're still red. Our numbers are still too high, and that it is safe for teachers, secretaries, and students. I do appreciate now the fact that employees have had their vaccines, but currently not one student in our district has received a vaccine unless they're in a trial. Many of their families have not received a vaccine. Many of their grandparents have not received a vaccine, and they don't feel comfortable with their children returning. Attendance has been low since we've reopened schools. I do think that we do need an option for some families to have 5 days if we can keep enough of the 6 feet of social distancing. We can make sure that there are real options for the students who want to remain remote, which right now we don't have that. I have been begging since last spring that we have to have good options, and I think it could have been worked out if we would have had the information and data from families. I know it's been very difficult. It keeps changing, but I do not think that for you to make this changes for the fourth quarter is fair to make students switch to Schoology or CDA for the whole fourth quarter, and to expect that families would be okay with nothing, no interactive instructions with a teacher. I think that we can figure this out if we all came to the table. I think there are options that we can do so that there are remote options for families that are interactive. There was just recently a commission study that the New York Times did on ventilations, and I would like to request a report on every classroom. They're saying the importance of being able to open windows as these numbers are going up again. I would like to see what is the ventilation, and because many of our classrooms are in classrooms without windows. The median age is lowering each week, and this past week, the median age of people having COVID is just 34 years old. That's the median age. So there are many teenagers who are getting this. Last week, out of the 7 days, 4 of the days we're seeing increases, and the only days with decreases were over the weekend. And so I think that we have to still be careful. We have to still watch this. And I hope that we can have some sort of quality information. And thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe that concludes the hearing of the public. So we're going to move forward, and the first item on the board matters agenda is really an extended discussion about the health and safety update. We decided to extend it in order that we hear the hearing of the public first. So at this time, I'd like to open up that discussion. If people have questions, want to get caught up or whatever, Deputy Superintendent Ahmad is here to address those questions. So having said that, we'll open the floor for questions or comments or any additional discussion. Mr. Morosky.
As promised, really, I only have one thing, and I think we heard it tonight as well, and we've probably, been hearing it in some way, shape, or form for a year, really, which is the choice piece, which, like a lot of our speakers tonight said, I certainly would throw my hat in the ring as being in favor of that. But again, I do think there is a large difference between choice and the specter of choice. And I think, and it's through no fault perhaps of ours, but that we are offering the specter of choice and not real choice. And I don't see how it's equitable to say to communities of color, you can stay home and use an Edgenuity online curricula or DDA. And so again, and I know everyone on this board at some point or another has brought up, working with our IT department to crack that code. But if we could offer, whether it's streaming, in-school remote option, in-school 5 days, and the CDA, I mean, that obviously is the ideal, and I certainly am supportive of that, but I don't believe that the current choice is an authentic choice.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Fulton, did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. I saw you.
Thank you. I'm going to have questions as they arise, but I do need the deputy to explain what is meant by that. You have in-person and you have CDA and you have then Schoology. Schoology, the attraction is that it's the same teacher. You stay within that same teacher of record, but isn't that, how would you be using Schoology? Is that only assigning things through Schoology? Is it no connection with the teacher besides the assignment? Perhaps you could explain what we may mean by Schoology.
Absolutely. We are currently in that model now. So on Mondays, students have that direct connection with their teachers. And then Tuesday through Friday, it is student directed. The assignments are posted on Schoology along the same assignments that the in-class students are receiving as well.
So there's not any interaction.
Correct.
Except in the assignment. I mean, it's just that it is particular to that school and particular to that teacher.
Correct.
It's not actually in-person instructional time, but it's self-directed.
Correct.
Thank you.
And repeat again, just for clarification, is that what the buildings are doing now? Each building has their own way of addressing it as a self-directed activity?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any additional questions, Ms. Bolton?
Not right now, but there will
Mr.
be
Messer,
later.
followed by Ms. Bowers, and then Ms. Bates.
Yes, thank you. You know, I had somebody say, "Oh, I counted this many public comment on this side versus this side." I think what is really going to be helpful is to actually get the survey data, which I hear that data is coming in quickly, so that's great. Because you can't make decisions just based on who happens to be able to come and call in and not doing dinner, or in our house, we'd be well past bedtime. So we need that. We also, I think the thing that people agree is they say, well, the school board's not listening to me. And it's because if we do this side, if we make this decision, this group thinks we're not listening, we do. So the moral of the story is, the way I sit, I have close personal friends who say, I need remote option, and I may not be comfortable till herd immunity. And to them I say, that's okay for you. And then I have friends who say, I am comfortable, get my kids back 5 days. I say, okay, good for you. That's okay for you. And so I think the win-win that we can create out of this situation through data is to provide that 5-day option with a viable option for remote. I think we don't have Jerry, he's out, and the superintendent said that he'll have some additional information on some technology that had been reviewed that I think changes the conversation. You know, I love the word interactive because that's very different than Schoology, because I'll say, you know, for those of us who are trying to deal with the 2 days on and 2 days off and the 1 day remote, the 2 days off, it's hard. First of all, you have to have somebody sitting there to help facilitate and the whole bit. It's nowhere near the same as having somebody there to interact with the children. Much more likely to get them to sit there and participate at the computer. But I do believe strongly we have to provide choice, and I think they have to be viable choices for both. And I think having some additional information for me on that remote opportunity for that side of the choice, that there is, you know, CDA, I think we've heard from plenty of our parents and families, that's not the choice they're asking for. They want this kind of interactive piece. So I think that would be a great piece of follow-up, and I maybe hit that in assignments, but to make sure that whatever has been looked into can be presented back to the board for consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Bowers?
Thank you, President Jones. Deputy Superintendent Amat, I just want some clarity on a couple of things. Remote option, which is not streaming, and we know that some schools, individuals have decided to do it. Do we know a number of schools that are doing that?
17.
17 schools are, and that's just like maybe a computer is up and it's on, and the student can see what's going on in the class, but there's not a lot of interaction. Yes.
Correct. There's a variety of ways that they're doing that remote option.
Okay, but it's only at 17 out of the 65?
Correct.
Okay. Next, when you say surveyed, who was really surveyed in the district? Was it just Walnut Hills parents that are surveyed, or was it all parents surveyed about 5 day a week?
The entire district.
Okay. And then regarding CDC and the ideal of there's 13 or 16 AP classes at Cincinnati Digital Academy versus the 35 or so that they have at their schools. And I know that's only digital or virtual. I mean, Ingenuity or what have you, the curriculum is being used there. How is that being rectified for those as an option for students, even though there's not? It's like half of the AP classes.
Yes, we have a customized approach. So what we put in place, once we get the student's master schedule, we contact individual teachers to see if they are willing to do extended time to add that student to the course. Sometimes it's during the school day it can work, or it's before or after. So it's not a part of the Edgenuity course. We are customizing our approach for those individual schedules.
But we're only allowed to have 13. Where's that 13 number coming from?
They're talking about the Edgenuity curriculum.
Okay,
We're
so this is
going
an addition.
beyond, yes, we're going beyond the Edgenuity curriculum and working directly with our teachers, but it's individualized because it's based on the student schedule.
And for those students, let's say for example, if that is an option for a student at Walnut Hills and they decide to go to CDA, or any student in the district that decides to go to CDA and take an AP courses, are they able to, what if they're not able to get an instructor for that course? What happens to them for the rest of the school year?
That has not happened as of date.
Okay.
We were able to accommodate every student who needed an AP course.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bates, followed by Mr. Lindy.
Yes, I think right now or today we're looking at short-term solutions. We're not looking at the long-term solutions and the short-term solutions, especially for Walnut, where we have our biggest physical crunch. It sounds like the Schoology option is, it's a good idea. None of this is perfect, but we're hearing with the third vaccination with J&J, with studies being done on young people right now, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And perhaps by this time next year, we may be closer to a semblance of normal. That's what I'm hearing. We're all probably hearing that, right? So I'm here to say that, I'm really not in favor of putting millions of dollars into infrastructure that we're only going to use for another year actively. I mean, we may fall back on it and that, but I know that we also have at least 2 properties that can be renovated. The foundation of Walnut picks up property when they can. And I would also want the board to consider, yes, we'd love to have the perfect solution for the next year, but we also have to look at the long-term solution of building out space so that we can accommodate, the children at Walnut, and not limit opportunities. I'm definitely not in favor of closing opportunities for kids who are capable of being successful at Walnut, but I really think we need to look at the long-term solutions and how much it's going to cost to expand facilities, renovate facilities, so we can accommodate all who want to go there.
Thank you. Mr. Lindy?
Thanks, President Jones. I wanted to start by saying just where I am personally on this, as somebody who's been trying to understand the presentations we've received in the science and the news, and a father of 2 kids, only one is in CPS, one's in preschool. Personally, I'd like to see us get back 5 days. I just want to be clear on where I am. And that comes from the science, also from watching the experience of other schools in Hamilton County and seeing what they're doing. I do think, for me, I'm not willing to give up yet on the idea that there'd be a virtual option that is stronger than the Schoology piece, and that would allow, I think, a thoughtful option for parents who have some health concern that would keep them out of being in there 5 days. I also think what Dr. Mussman said, although he didn't answer directly the question I asked, I thought that what he said was thoughtful, that this is such a personal choice, that parents should have real choices in front of them. I do agree with that. All of that leads me to 3 things that I wanted to ask about or share with the administration. I think thing one, I appreciate, Member Bowers bringing this up, because I wasn't sure if the survey went to all families or just Walnut families. So I appreciate that clarification. But on that survey point, can you just talk a little bit about when we get the results back? I'm assuming we're going to get information on what parents want in person versus virtual. And how are we going to know that what we have is a representative?
Krista, can you come up and please share your process?
So we'll share all those details.
We can share response rates.
Are you confident that we'll have a representative picture?
So we did I'll call it a new thing. It's new for me. We did paper. So in addition to email, we're also offering a paper survey, and we're hoping to get higher response rates.
Okay. Is there a way to link like who responded? So we can see not just a number, but we can know, whatever percent of that school or
by school.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we look at white versus black respondents? Can we look at low income versus middle income?
It's not connected to our power school, and we did not ask for specific names.
Okay.
So we probably will not be able to break it out beyond Title I schools.
But we could see response rate by school.
Mm-hmm.
That alone, I think, is a great step forward, and I just want to acknowledge that and say.
Yep, absolutely.
I think the other topic I wanted to bring up, I think Board Member Messer was referencing. I am of the opinion, I'm not sure if other board members will agree with me or not, that we should ask for some kind of public working group on this technology piece that would include both people from inside our administration and also some folks from outside. The reason I'm saying this is I feel like this topic has come up so many times, and I don't want to call into question, I think, the genuine good faith effort that members of the administration, Jeremy, superintendent, others have made to try to figure this out. And I'm also not convinced that we have done everything that we can. And part of the picture I have in my head that I wanted to float to this group is, what if there were some group of key people within CPS, certainly Jeremy, I'm assuming others too, also some folks from the outside. Who might, I'm imagining, what if there were someone from Cincinnati Bell, for example? What if there were people who have access to philanthropic resources in Cincinnati? So if the real issue is it just costs too much, we could also explore creative paths to finding that funding. But I just think that so much of what will make or break this plan is whether or not there is a really strong virtual option for people. And I think if we had some group like that had to report to this body on a regular basis over the next couple of weeks or months, it might create more, I think, transparency and also understanding in the public for what we can and can't accomplish. I'm rounding third and coming for home for our board president, and I appreciate the time. The last thing I wanted to bring up was about communications. I've gotten a lot of feedback from parents about, I think, frustrations with our communication as a district. And I've really tried to ask questions to understand what the concerns are about. Because I know we communicate all the time. I'm a parent. I get a bunch of robocalls. I know the superintendent is holding town hall. I know that there are efforts at every single board meeting to go back over what the decision-making criteria have been and all those things. And as I listened and asked questions, I think what I learned was when we change the way we make a decision about whether we have kids in person or not, even if it's for really, really, really good, I think we just need to create additional opportunities for parents to engage on those things. And so what I'm imagining is, what if schools had a principal-led town hall with parents, where parents could not just receive information, but actually ask follow-up questions and get real responses from the leaders of their buildings on why we're doing what the things are that we're doing. I just think that, one, it's a good test for us to make sure that our rationale is clear enough that a principal could take it and run a town hall on it. And then second, I think that if parents have those kinds of opportunities to engage and really feel like their questions are getting answered, I have to believe it would build a lot of goodwill. So those were my pieces. I'll just close by saying I think this request that we have a clear plan by the 15th of March for what school is going to look like next year is very reasonable.
Thank you. I would like to offer my thoughts, although my thoughts are pretty jumbled right now, so I'm going to do the best I can to kind of sort out. I get a sense that we're always talking about recreating things or retalking things or rethinking things that we've done all year. I do not feel that there is a perfect solution. I do not. And so, while I appreciate the comment Mr. Lindy had, the suggestion about looking at the long-term, the technology piece, I guess that's what you're talking about. I see that as a long-term issue that we could talk about for infrastructure development, which is more long term. The one thing that I think is more short term for us is the one thing that I have heard consistently over this year, and we've heard it in all the forums we've had, all the other surveys, the town halls, email, text message, is that parents want choice. There are no perfect choices. And somebody also said there's always going to be a risk of COVID, of somebody catching COVID. I don't want to see that happen. I want the risk to be zero. But the reality of it is we can't shift. We have to make a decision and hold firm to the decision, whatever that is. To me, the option that gives us that is parental choice. Now, having said that, my comfort level is keep things right as they are. Expectation, we go back 5 days in the fall. That's my comfort level. But given that I think to honor and recognize parental choice, I would be willing to consider that. I don't know that I'm ready to decide that today because I'd like to see the survey data. I'd like to see the data, and I'd like to get the answers to the questions about the variant. So for me, I'd be hesitant to even make a decision about that. The options for remote, again, it is what do we do short term and what do we do long term? Short term, it may not be the most ideal, but it is an option. And we just have to go. I don't think we can change that. You know, if schools are in fact having success with what they're doing, then that's what they should do. However, I do want to add that if we do decide that students go back, I'm wondering what will be the practicality in them going back 4 days, with one being deep cleaning. And that, so I'm asking a question, where are we in the whole deep cleaning piece? Because initially we had talked about 1 day being for deep cleaning.
Sarah, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we have protocols in place to be able to go 5 days a week and get the cleaning done.
And get the deep cleaning. Okay. So that's my thought about kind of where we are right now. Go ahead, Ms. Bolton.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's comments. Couple things. I think that the community probably needs to know we have over 60 schools, and we have PK8, we have PK6, we have K6, we have K8, we have 712s, we have 3 through 8 and whatever. So the reality is one size does not necessarily fit all, and 1 or 2 decisions actually can fill our schools based upon if we concentrate on the younger students. What's emerging for me right now is what was first mentioned back in August, which was more the hybrid piece. And the hybrid piece we kind of put aside largely because of the cost of the transportation to multiple sites and God knows where else was part of that problem. Where the hybrid, I think, was the lower grades versus the upper grades. And so I have very few reservations about the lower grades going back for a fuller week. I think there are reservations that I would have about high schools if it's a high school that could not do this based upon the space. So in my brain, it's the hybrid. There's parts of that hybrid that's kind of emerging. But besides that, I want to speak to this technology piece. This would be the 6th month that we have talked about why can't we do something technologically, and the administration has told us at least 4 times why we can't do it. Whether it was financial, whether it was the broadband width, whatever it was, there were reasons. Now we love to have Jeremy come back and explain that to us. I'm going to disagree with Melanie on one thing, and that is I think regardless of where we are with COVID, part of that new CPS is that we are going to have to be able to deliver authentic, digital, remote, as well as in-person at every site at the beginning of the next school year. We're just going to have to do it because it's going to be an expectation. But to Melanie's point, do you want to invest some money now when indeed it's going to be a huge thing to do next time? So those are the hybrid piece, and absolutely a completely digital parallel school site delivery system next year. And I think that, it would have been great to have that, but people are forgetting that we had to also figure out who didn't have instruments, who didn't have Wi-Fi, who needed meals, who needed to keep doing the health check. I mean, people kind of start at these levels that they don't really comprehend where we were almost a year ago, and especially from an equity standpoint. So I'm getting tired of people finding all the things we've done wrong without doing any of the asset measurement of what we've done right. But I think that you would find a difference among our high schools capacity to meet more than the blended. And I think blended has made sense as best it can, but I don't think that the Schoology piece, unless there's some sort of interaction with the teacher, is going to be seen by our families as an authentic effort. But I'm anxious to hear things, and we have to decide stuff next week, and we have more stuff that we can find out about. But what's emerging for me is that I'm being comfortable, and I'm comfortable, as Carolyn has mentioned, about 4-1 instead of 5, or 1-4. And it's not about cleaning, but it's about if you're going to have a classroom as a teacher and you have some of your kids that are on remote, and you know this as an instructor, and you have some of your kids in that same class that are in person, there has to be a day that they're somehow together. It's a creature of the classroom instruction. So I would be using it not for cleaning, because I think you're right. We've advanced enough, and there's a lot of stuff about surface cleanliness that was important a few months ago, but is less important now. I could see a 1-4, and I'd always would want it to either be a Monday or a Friday or something that would join people together. But I'm moving in the direction of having more in person. But the hybrid's there, and then this humongous amount of money we're going to need to spend an effort on next year too.
Okay. I would just like to add that in the survey, we do have that option on there, the 4 days a week too. So we will be able to report out what our families are saying for the 4-day-a-week model.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Morosky and then Mr. Messer.
Thank you so much. I just have 3 quick points. The first is I don't want Ben's comments to get drowned out. I think this is something that would have to happen beginning yesterday, and I think it can happen maybe by next week. And I don't know if it comes in the form of an assignment or what, but I'm happy for Ben to make it or anybody. But I think we have to rely on some outside help to do this, because we are never going to, at least to echo Ms. Bolton. And I don't know enough about it to talk about the bridge or what Jeremy knows, but we've been told repeatedly we can't do authentic choice. And I will repeat until I'm blue in the face, the choice we're offering is not a real choice. So we need to offer that real choice, and then I'm totally comfortable we can move this ship ahead, but we're not going to be able to do it by ourselves. So I just want to make sure that Mr. Lindy's point does not get dropped. Second, Ms. Bauer's question, and this goes back a while, but I wanted to just double, triple check with the deputy superintendent. And I could be totally wrong, which would be fantastic. But I feel like you all were talking about maybe 2 different surveys, because you were asking about the one that the ink isn't even dry on, the one that just went out. And I thought that one just went to Walnut Hills High School. I wasn't under the impression the survey went to the entire district.
That's my inquiry was about the entire.
No, I know that.
About coming back to school.
Right. And I didn't know. So there was a survey that went out to everybody, like recently?
Yes, Krista.
That's great. Good. Then I'm wrong.
So they may hit tomorrow. So some schools distributed today, some will distribute tomorrow. And kids take home in their backpacks starting home tomorrow.
Okay.
But Walnut, because they're all remote, we just.
So they're the ones that got, okay.
Yep. But it'll be everybody.
That would
And
explain,
staff.
got it.
And staff too.
Great.
Start tomorrow.
Great.
Yep.
Awesome. So that clears out good. So I'm glad I ended up asking, but great. I'm glad I'm wrong. And then lastly, when it comes to communication, and I'm not a communication expert, but it does seem to me that when we talk about when we send out these surveys and how we do it with paper, send them with kids or whatever, and trying to reach everybody, it seems to me that whenever we want to tell people what to do, we're good at it. We text them or we call them. So I'm just curious, maybe we should think about doing that when we want to know what they think, because I feel like we communicate two different ways. We want to tell people something and when we want their feedback, and the former tends to be more precise in its delivery. And so I would just encourage us to maybe consider using the same techniques we use to tell people things to garner their feedback.
Thank you. Mr. Messer?
Yeah, the one thing I was going to address was, the question on the 4 to 5 days. I think calling a day for deep cleaning, in theory, it sounds good. I think if we have a viable interactive option, that I think we just have to figure that out, then the hope is that perhaps the classes are interacting all week. And, I think we could figure it out to make sure that the buildings are clean, when they break at 2:30. I think to some degree there's deep cleaning every day as far as I understand already. But I would just say that, the good news is it's going to be included in that parent survey to get that feedback, because I think what we do right now is we either base it on what we heard in public comment or we hear things in email, and I can come up with this opinion. I really am desperately awaiting that data. I think it's going to be fascinating by building, by community. And so, I just appreciate that that's coming. And thank you to Krista for setting that out.
And we'll have that data for you on March 8th.
March 8th?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I just want to be clear, because I think somehow it was my comment that maybe was misunderstood, but I wasn't speaking against the suggestion that Mr. Lindy had. I was probably saying it more in support of us looking at what we can do short term versus long term. And if that means we have to create something in the short term to look at it as a long term concern, I would be okay with that. But again, thinking in terms of financial implications as part of our future vision for CPS, we have to think about the reality of the cost too. And not that it's not practical or feasible or whatever, but it needs to be built into that whole plan that we worked out. That's why I was saying that. But Melanie's point about short term, long term, I think there are some things that we can do short term, and I think we're probably closer in agreeing to what we might do short term than we are long term. But anyway, the consensus that I hear from the group is that we want to see the data, right? Am I right about that? We want to see the data. What else? There was something else. The report on the variant. And anything else? There was some discussion about the different options. And you said it best, but I can't repeat it because I forgot.
What's emerging for me is more of a hybrid, where it's possible that the PK through 8 might be doing much more in person.
Hybrid by grade level.
Yeah, by grade level, and that there might be some high schools that could be doing it too based upon their physical space, but even more particularly based upon their programming. Because it's the programming that's is hindering us as well as the staffing.
Okay. Don't take it any farther than that. I think that's clear enough. I also heard that we very clearly talked about the values that we have around communication, the importance of that, the importance of parental choice, and that we literally have heard that all year. And so I think it's worthy of us saying that. That's, we do value that. It comes in all forms. and we hear it and we read it and we do accept it. So our next board meeting, we can address these things. Deputy Superintendent.
Yes, I have here more feedback from our IT department and possibly looking at a public working group. I have principal town hall as a strategy to improve communication, along with an analysis of the survey data, answering the questions around variance, short-term and long-term options. Please consider the hybrid for different grade levels and improve communication.
Sounds good. Mr. Lindy. Hold on. I get you. Mr. Lindy.
Thanks, President Jones. I think what Deputy Superintendent Amat shared was very helpful. I just want to go back and make sure I'm following a couple things. So one was on the idea of this technology working group. I heard you mention it, but what's the next thing that happens there?
I will follow up with our chief of IT, Jeremy, when he returns, to consider putting together a public working group to help problem solve around our infrastructure and possible streaming options. Because I'm hearing that it's the long-term goal.
Yep.
What can we look to do to improve a remote option? And it appears that streaming is the best option.
Yep. I'll just say two things on that. One is, I think Member Bolden was bringing this up too, that we've been talking about this for months. I completely agree. I think that some of the things that haven't come up yet, which I hope would be a part of Jeremy's thinking here, is, what would it cost for us to do this? How long would it take if we had that money tomorrow? And so it's less of like, why can't we do it, but more like, what would it take? And could we create a path to do that? And then I think I would just share is the way I heard you play that back, Deputy Superintendent, was that Jeremy will decide whether or not we should have this working group. I think if he comes back and first of all, if I mischaracterized what you said, tell me. Second, if that is right and he comes back and says, I don't think we should do it, I think we should talk about that, because I feel very strongly that we should do it. So much so that I'm tempted to push for like some kind of resolution or something tonight. Not just because I think we need help. And I want to marshal that help. But again, I may be over-dialed on something I shouldn't worry about because it's all going to work great. And I wanted to ask you what you thought about that.
I do recall, and I don't know the date, that Jeremy did a presentation for the board with the timeline, possible cost, the number of years. So I know he had that presentation done before. So I will ask him to go back and maybe send that out to the entire board. And then where are we today? Because that was a few months back. As far as based on this discussion being in board matters, I have it as a consideration and not an assignment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Besser.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add to the list is I think as we're thinking about making the decision on the 10th or whatever the other date was, or the kind of this first, 15th was the other day. I think also we have to prioritize and making a declaration on what our plans are for August. I think it's very clear, if we're not going to offer a 5-day in person for the fall, we need to declare it. If we are, and people don't want our remote option, everybody deserves to know kind of what they're signing up for right now so they can find an option, if they are not satisfied with that. But I think we have to give our public something they can respond to sooner versus later for August. So if we could do this together, I think sooner the better for everyone.
Okay.
With the intention of trying to provide an option that we keep every family and hopefully attract some of those that we've lost.
Okay. Ms. Bolton, and I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak, but we really do need to move on. So if you have a comment, Ms. Bolton?
Just to clarify,
Ms. Bates, I'm
just
sorry.
kind of to piggyback on Mr.
Okay.
Messer, and I'll take just when we do come up with a date saying, or when we do come up with a determination that this is what we're doing next year, let's please have a dovetail with the magnet school lottery. Because people are in the lottery, they're on wait lists for parochial schools, they're going to have to make a decision. So when, we can't ask people to accept into the magnet schools when we haven't decided on what we're doing next year. So let's coordinate that. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Bolton, one last short
Just
comment.
to reiterate, my idea about Form 1 was not a cleaning, it was an instructional effort. But the other piece is, I think the superintendent told us in her presentation tonight that is what Mr. Messer is saying, that at that time, we're talking also about next year, and we're going to be very transparent about that. So that's all part of the new CPS or what have you. So you're right. The families need to know now. And obviously, treasurer and everybody needs to know because of the budget.
Okay. Great. All right. So I think, Deputy Superintendent, you have what you need from us?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to move on with our next board matters, and that's the growth plan.
Yes, and I can make this very, very short. You'll be so happy. There's a draft that I'm passing around the table, and it's what I asked or what I mentioned that we have. As you know, it's a Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee that is going to sign that from the strategic plan. And here are a few pages that try to capture where we are historically regarding our growth plans that we've agreed to, ones that we've talked about, ones that need to be addressed. And so I will just give this to board members to review. We'll be talking about growth plan in our special public meeting of finance. I guess it's next week. But this will cover some planned where we were when COVID hit, what we were thinking about as being a part of our expansion program. It goes back to even the FMP and how long that took, and the FMP plus, and then something Mr. Morosky and I were very committed to was the kind of reordering of some of these neighborhood boundaries for our neighborhood schools. You can't have a neighborhood school if you divide the neighborhoods up. So that's part of it, as well as some of the buildings that we still have available to us. And I think that this might be of interest to you to review.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. I think it's a great document summary. I think we sometimes, just like we said, people sometimes forget all the good things that we've done, that this reminds us that we were already working on a lot of these things. So this is helpful. Thank you.
And then the only other addition to that is there'll be a little page of what we've called the hemisphere, as it once was in CPS. And then we've since then, in the last 2 years, been talking about that meridian plan and what that might mean. So here's the justification, and here's the context and the history.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Messer, next board matters item, discussion regarding collaboration with City Council.
Yeah, this was a follow-up. I had a nice conversation with Councilwoman Kearney, Jan-Michelle Lemon Kearney, who happens to also be a neighbor, but we were chatting about some of the calls that she had been getting about CPS. And then there were questions about kind of somebody had raised a question about our snow days. And then, I was trying to make the case to one of the constituents that, yes, your sidewalks might be clear, but I happened to be in Over the Rhine and right after one of the snow days. It was 3 days after the major snow, and most of the sidewalks going between Rothenburg and the north side of the neighborhood looked as if the snow had just fallen. So it was an awareness of that's a prohibiting factor for some of our kids just to get to their school building. They're not being dropped off by a parent or a grandparent or a caregiver. Many of them are walking. So anyway, we talked about several things, and it just triggered me to think about when I joined the board, there was at least I had heard that there was a collaboration set of meetings, and then it turned less into collaboration. And then we just kind of got actually in this room and just talked about the abatement. And then we had another meeting, I think, there, which was about the abatement agreement. But we didn't get to some of the other things that I think really could be, really worthwhile. So I just wanted to bring that to the board to see if that's something people would be supportive of, and maybe Carolyn could connect with the appropriate committee at City Hall to find some mutually beneficial topics that we could work on together, part of which might play well into our expansion and growth plan.
Just to kind of add to what you're saying, most of you, or at least, I think most of us remember when we had the ACEs group. And that's the form that we used. And I believe it wasn't with all of council, it was with the educational committee. And there was, for a long time, I believe, and that there was a great deal of value in that, because these kinds of items, it was agenda, and we would meet quarterly, similarly to the way we met with similarly to the way we meet with Preschool Promise. Broad scope issues, things like that, catch up, figure out how we partner together. Then it got diluted, however, and I don't remember exactly what happened. But I would say where we left it at the time when we decided not to do it is that we could revisit it at a time that either entity thought that it would be beneficial. So if we want to do that, we can certainly have a conversation about revisiting that model, and we could tweak it, make it a viable sort of collaboration for us, if that's what folks want to do. Go ahead, and then Ms. Bowman.
Yeah, the ACEs, I couldn't think of the name, but that stopped right before I joined the board. So was it the whole board met with their education committee, or was it one of our committees met with their group? Does anybody remember?
I don't remember. Do you, Ms. Bolton?
It was, the whole board could attend. And the thing that, and it was noticed as a board meeting, and there was rotation as to who chaired.
That's right.
And then my recollection too is that it all blew up when we were faced with the new agreement that we had to go forward with on tax abatement, because their view of history was significantly different than ours. And the other piece, I think it's a good thing to do again. I'm a little worried about it being an election year that we do it in. But I think it was a good thing when it was well done.
Maybe go ahead, Ms. Bowers.
Yes, because I wasn't here when ACES was in play. What does ACES stand for?
Oh my gosh, Ms. Bates.
Yeah.
Ms. Bates, do you remember what it stood for?
Alliance Community
Education, something.
Okay. It's not like trauma and
No. So, Mr. Morosky.
I would just say for my piece, and I said this publicly back then, so I'll say it again. I mean, it felt more photo op-y than anything, and so Mr. Messer's point, like an authentic working group of our two bodies, I think is way overdue and an awesome idea. But the last incarnation, in addition to being an extremely unfortunate acronym for anybody who understands anything about education, it was a photo op. So it didn't really feel like we got anything done, but Ms. Bolton's correct. It blew up when
I think
having an authentic group's a good idea.
I think it would be appropriate, Mr. Messer, to do an assignment. We could work on it, and we can get feedback from this group and talk to them, interact with them, and see if we can't pull something together. So you make an assignment at that time. Okay. Next item, Mr. Morosky.
Thank you, President Jones. This was on an agenda a while ago, y'all may remember. We had like a 5-6 hour meeting, and so I said, you know what, we'll talk about it another time, and I kept forgetting to put it back on the agenda, so I apologize. I think this too, like Ms. Bolton's and Mr. Messer's, can be quick. You will recall that 7540.04 policy is acceptable internet usage standards, and it came up in policy committee, and we felt that it belonged as a full board discussion. In fact, I think this was before policy committee was Mr. Lindy and Ms. Bolton. That's how long ago this was. And since our Facebook page and Twitter page, YouTube page, et cetera, are by law a public forum or public fora, I don't know if that's right, but it sounds smart. We cannot limit comment, nor would we ever think to. But there are cases, since we are a school district, which means there are a lot of students and children looking at our site, presumably, we thought that it might be worthwhile to look at what it would feel like to put in, say, not violating board policy 2255, equity, 2256, anti-racism, not using curse words, things like this. So again, not limiting speech. So people can still come and tell us we're terrible if they want. That's fine. But they can't tell us we're blank, blank, blank terrible and other things. So that's what this means. I thought it was important as chair last year, and again as this year, that it was a kind of a bigger discussion, but also to just make it very public and transparent now for the second time in public session. This is not about censorship. This is about ensuring that we're, abiding by the policies of the district to be kind, even when we're telling, somebody we disagree or don't even maybe like them. So I don't know if anyone has any feedback. If not, I will refer this to policy as an assignment now to us to look at this next time.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that Mr. Hoying? Is that, did I cover?
Okay. Thank you. All right. Anyone having kudos?
Kudos.
Yes. Ms.
I
Morales.
learned something that I did not know, so I want to give kudos. I don't know if you all knew it. If you knew it, then you're better than me. Frederick Douglass School, I wrote a note. Frederick Douglass School, one of our neighborhood schools, of course, in Walnut Hills, has been a school for eons. They were around before they were in our district, and we sort of assumed them, I think, maybe in the 20s or something, or 30s. But they have been a member of the National Network for Education Renewal, NNER, for the past 5 years, and has been celebrated nationally as a model school for university and school partnerships. It was kind of top of mind, too. We had a principal pipeline meeting. I know that their principal has done a lot since they've been there. And they've been doing a whole lot of work in equity and anti-racism, et cetera. So I just wanted to call that out. I didn't know that, and so I wanted to highlight them and say kudos to Frederick Douglass School.
Thank you. Any other kudos? Mr. Lindy?
Thanks, President Jones. This was just for the presentation tonight that shared some of the numbers around academic impact of our current learning model. I didn't know some of these things before I saw it, and I just wanted to say I found it very compelling and very well done, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you. Any other kudos? Okay, retirements, Ms. Bates?
Yes, I have one retirement to commemorate, and that is from our civil service personnel, Crystal Hinton. And we wish Ms. Hinton the best in her retirement. Thank her for her service to her children, to our children, and congratulations.
Thank you. Deputy Superintendent, you have a report?
Yes, I do. The superintendent report is submitted for your approval with one change in recommendation number 3, which relates to the extension of Families First Coronavirus Response Act, or FFCRA. I am requesting that the leave benefit be extended to all employee groups, not just CFT. With that change, the superintendent report is submitted for your approval.
Thank you, Ms. Amat. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Wagner?
This will be a revised recommendation.
That's for the revised. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Yes, for the revised
Thank you.
recommendation. Revised report. Thank you.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky? President Jones?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve the report of the treasurer?
So moved.
The revised treasurer's report?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Messer? Mr. Morosky? President Jones?
Yes. Thank you. Any inquiries and updates? I'll start. board calendar. This is the time that we need to develop the board calendar for next year. So last year this was actually an assignment, and I can make an assignment, but I'm just saying that as an update, if the same people want to do it, you could just volunteer right now and save us the time. Thank you. That
as long
works.
as we meet at Mr. Messer's home.
So assigned. I would only ask that we make sure, and Mr. Lindy can help us with this. We want to make sure that we're sensitive to the holidays, the religious holidays, and all the holidays to celebrate our diversity. Okay, great. Any other inquiries and updates? Mr. Lindy?
Yeah, I have two, but I'm happy to wait till after Ms. Bolden goes.
You have to wait what?
I said I'm happy to. Mr. Bolden had her hand up. I wanted to wait till Melanie was back. I'm happy to wait, and she has her hand
Okay.
up.
My inquiry and hope is that as long as you're talking about the board calendar, that the request from the administration that we look at and review the proposed calendar committee's proposal, that we table that temporarily until we can really have a better understanding of what next year and the following year might look like. It won't make any sense to create a new CPS if we are in this old CPS calendar. And I think the CFT contract makes it a contractual thing, but not necessarily puts a date on when it must be adopted. And if the calendar committee comes out with a recommendation, and if the superintendent has a different one, then it does follow the board. But regardless, the board has to approve the calendar. And I don't think we're ready to do that yet.
Okay, so that sounds like an assignment.
Yes.
So you might want to make that again.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm happy to go then. That's fine. So I have two things. I think one was, and if this was shared earlier, I want to apologize. I just want to make sure I got it down correctly. But there's a lot of, I think, good and important discussion tonight about what learning models look like next, around a potential return to more in-person learning. Also some good questions about next year. I just wanted to get clear for myself and for the public. Do we know when we're going to make decisions on what particular topics?
I believe that the way I understood when I heard from the superintendent was that we have March 10th and March 15th, preferably March 10th, just because of the timing of spring break and all that movement, just to give parents time to prepare.
Yeah.
So it would be ideal if we could make that decision no later than March 10th.
Okay, and that decision would be about whether to bring kids back to more increased learning in person this year?
That, I think what I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, it would be short-term and long-term.
Short-term and long-term.
Short-term and long-term. What are we going to do right now? And then what is the plan for next year? That's what I believe that I heard. Yes.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, my second one is there have been we've just come up in the hearing of the public, but there have been a series of reports about a set of comments that my colleague Melanie is alleged to have made at a local establishment a couple weekends ago. And I wanted to share with you all that for my part, two things feel like they're true here. The first is there are just some outstanding questions about what exactly was said and what the context was that I genuinely don't know the answer to. The second thing I wanted to share is that the allegations feel serious to me and do call into question, I think, what some of our values are as a board. So the reason I put this under inquiry is I have just questions, which is, do we have a process we use to investigate potential breaches in values by a board member? And if we don't have that process, could we create one? The reason why I'm asking is I think having a process like this is important because the public should see the full board aligning our actions to our values. I think it's one of the ways we build trust. And I wanted to share, I did review our current bylaws, and I didn't see anything that felt like it was quite what I was looking for. And so I wanted to ask, do we have a process like that? If we don't, could we create
one? Ms. Bolton, do you want to take a shot?
I'm not sure how extensive the concerns are, but there is a process within board policy and bylaws that's clearly stated, and it has something to do with breaches, if you will, of board or federal or state rules and regulations. It doesn't deal with necessarily freedom of speech or us defining particular values, but there is a process, and perhaps we, whoever would want to look at that, I think they can look at that, and I know Mr. Lindy, I think, has probably looked at it by now. But that's where the process takes place.
If I can respond to that, Ms. Bolden, I think that the part I saw required somebody to file a complaint. And the reason I don't feel quite comfortable doing that yet is I feel like there are just a lot of things we don't know. So is that the one you're thinking of?
Yeah, I think it's 0118 or something like that. And there's specific steps, and those would be the steps that you would take if indeed whatever is alleged rose to that level. So it's a clear process that is outlined in the bylaws, which we've adopted.
May I ask, is that separate from the one that's fairly recent, I would say within the past 2 years or so, about addressing a person one-on-one?
It's the same thing.
Is this it?
It's the same thing.
It's the same one.
Yeah, if somebody wouldn't mind sending that my way, I'm curious if it's the one I saw or a different one.
If you don't mind, Phyllis, one of the ladies will be happy to send it to you, to reference it for you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Not for me.
Inquiries? Updates? Okay. Assignments. Now, I know we had assignments. Okay, Ms. Bolden.
Mine's at, oh no, I'm sorry. No, you're good. Mine was the calendar piece, going back to the administration saying we're not prepared to do that, and see if the superintendent has some other option, or can we at least delay it?
Okay. All right, and then I believe, Mr. Messer, I believe that the assignment that I had asked, did you want to make that assignment to me? You did. Is it the board's will?
Yes,
Okay.
and that was that President Jones reach out to the appropriate person at council to coordinate at least the start of a conversation to get us working together.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Mr. Morosky?
Just to formalize my assignment to myself, policy committee will take up the acceptable use social media policy at our next committee meeting.
Okay, great. Anything else? Okay, having no other business before us, I declare the meeting adjourned.